Good evening, everybody. I would like to officially call this workshop to order of Manvel City Council on September 18th, 2023. We are calling it to order at 5 p.m. We have a few items on the workshop. I'll go ahead and read off all of these now. I have a suspicion that this first item is going to take up a majority of the time. So we have a presentation and update by Core Construction on the police station, discussion on the fiscal year 2023-2024 proposed budget, and discussion on any topic as listed on the current agenda. So with that, Dan, I'll turn it over to you. And we also, Dan, if you can highlight the new technology that we're using tonight.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So, yes, we'll start with the new technology. So in churches, they typically call this like a confidence monitor. So it's not a teleprompter by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a monitor. It's a screen, just like what we're looking at, but it's right there. So whoever's presenting can see what it is too, so they're not having to constantly be looking over their shoulders. And thanks to Joey and his group for designing it such that it doesn't block, y'all's view. So we had to get kind of creative, and of course there was something out on the internet to be had, and they found it, and so it works great. Since Chief isn't here, Wale, I hate to put you on the spot, but would you mind just kind of framing the project real quick on how we got here? Chief is on his way. He'll be here in just a couple minutes, but.
All right. Good evening, Council, Mayor, staff. I do like this. All right. So, as you guys know, we are in dire need of a new police station. We have outgrown our current facility, and we have, since November of last year, selected Core to be our construction manager at risk. They have went out to the market multiple times for bids. They've been working in conjunction with PGAL with the plans that we have designed for the building, and they believe they've brought us the best price that we can find. And they're not going to deliver the GMP today, but they're going to give a presentation on that and how they went through the process of going through the painstaking part of filtering the bids, finding out what would be the best selection. It's not always the cheapest price that gets you what you need. It's the best vetted, tenured contractor. And that's what they're here to present, that they have the best contractors, they do the best work, and their motto is they deliver a GMP under budget every time, all the time. So.
And Wally, I'd like to highlight too, because we do have some newer council members that weren't here for the process of the CMAR process. If you're not familiar with that, typically projects are at least in the past with Manvel, it was just the lowest bidder. Whoever had the lowest bid, that's who got the contract. Example with this building right here, right? So construction manager at risk, right? CMAR. So we were able to look at, the selection committee was able to look at several different components, not just the price, right? It's the overall package, the expertise, the experience. Chief got to visit, what was it, Granbury? Granbury, we got to visit a couple of different facilities. I know he just snuck in. See how I did that? Perfect transition. Anything you want to say before they start on their presentation, Chief? Okay.
Okay, so would you like me to tell them why we don't go with lowest bidder anymore? Or would you like me just to walk them through the... Okay. So obviously with lowest bidder, there is a lot of afterthought, right? There's a lot of after work in a sense, because you go back, and we're still fixing problems with this building today. I think AC went out recently. So we're working round the clock trying to remedy problems that we didn't catch because we didn't have the best vendors. We didn't have enough staff to keep eyes on the vendors and contractors that were working on this building, and we missed a lot of things. And we didn't have a representative who was ethical enough to come back and honor their agreements. And that's why we took the next step in bringing in a construction manager at risk, because it puts them at risk. If they do not deliver what they promised, if they do not come in at the correct budget, they are willing to basically shoulder that burden and finance correcting any mistakes. And that's why they go through such a detailed process of selection. They don't just pick mom and pops unless they're local, of course, but they have to be vested and tenured. They have to be well known, well recommended. They're the type of guys who are going to actually call all the references. when they get these bids. They don't just pick one or two or don't call any. They check with all the references. They vet all of their vendors. Most of them they've already worked with in conjunction. They've done a multitude of police stations in the Texas, United States area all together, and they're tried and true.
So PGAL is the architecture firm that helped sort of design most of the front end documents, so almost all the way, and then whenever council selected CORE to come in to be the CMAR, so then it's been sort of this trifecta of the city and PGAL and CORE all working together to get this across the finish line. So we're almost to the point now where we're ready to go to construction, so that we can get this building constructed before 2030. That Chief keeps, stop telling the public that, Chief, because it will be way before that. About how long are we looking, or I don't want to steal anything from their presentation. Is that a good enough sort of introduction to how we got to this point, Mayor?
Yeah, I think so. And now I know where that rumor is coming from, so Chief and I can have a conversation.
Chief.
What I would ask Dan is what are you guys looking for any sort of outcome from council tonight? Are you guys looking for any direction, or it's more so just an update and here's what the next steps will be?
It's really an update. So we would love to be bringing you the GMP that we keep talking about. It's a guaranteed maximum price. We would love to bring that to you at the first meeting in October. That's what we're shooting for. So we didn't, once we start talking about price, wait a minute, we've got new council members. Let's just take a step back real quick, kind of like what we did last meeting with the wastewater treatment plant. Let's just take a step back, let's show our work. I mean, this is an exciting project. This isn't something you buy off the shelf. I mean, this has taken months and months and months of work with Wale and Chief and his team and our architects and the contractor too. So it's really just to bring y'all up to speed. It really is, Mayor.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. Would love to go through the presentation, and then we'll, of course, open it up for questions or comments at the end. So I think that's a good overview. I guess one other question is, usually with projects, you have to go through an RFQ, RFP process, and state law dictates how you go through that. Can you kind of give an overview, a little bit of how a construction manager at risk is a little bit different, and kind of how we went through that entire process?
Well, yeah, like you said, it's not completely different process, but it is very similar to RFQ. We put out a notice and we gave criteria based on that RFQ about what we were looking for with our construction manager at risk. We had several interviews. I think we had a total of 7 submissions. We went with the top 3. We sat down with the top 3 for interviews. And after going through each one, and, going by each line of criteria, we all came to agreement. It wasn't a unanimous decision, but overall, our scores tallied up in CORE's favor. They don't have the lowest price. They don't have the lowest percentage. They do have the most experience. And, having our panel of 7 select that group, we knew that, okay, we all come from different backgrounds. I myself am very frugal. So for me to give them an awarding score really showed that, okay, their submission was detailed. It was exactly what we were looking for. Just from a project management standpoint, I could only imagine going this deep with bids, networking with Centerpoint, gas, electrical, so many different entities just to come to a final design. I don't think all the staff could have handled this by ourselves. So we needed to bring in someone who knew what to do to deliver what we wanted.
And I think that's perfect, because in times past, when the city's gone out for projects, we've technically been the project manager. So we're going out for the actual construction. Instead, we went out for, in a sense, a bid. That CORE won that bid based off of the scoring, and they're going to facilitate that construction between us. And Wale, your job's to make sure that they stay in line and whip them into shape if they need to be whipped into shape.
That is correct.
All right, perfect. No, I think we're good, Dan.
All right.
Howdy. My name's John Targotch. I'm a pre-construction manager with CORE, specifically working on the Manvel police station. I was ready to give a project overview, but just I guess we kind of already hit on that, but specific things about the project. We started off with a budget of 18 million for this police station. It was a 45,000 square foot greenfield site right next to the existing police station. So that's just kind of a brief background on what's going to be constructed here. So really, I just want to prep y'all on what the GMP is going to look like, what we've done to this point since y'all have hired us in September, and really just showcase what we've done to this point for your project. So these are kind of some of the topics we'll hit on: virtual, digital construction, trade partner collaboration, basically our GMP deliverables. So the first item are constructability reviews. Basically what we do is we'll take the model that we'll receive from PGAL, and we'll go ahead and clash detect that model. So BIM is a common phrase if you're not familiar, but we'll go through, and before construction, the idea is to find the issues that will arise, whether it's clashing ductwork with steel or light fixtures in the way of different objects or whatnot. But we want to figure out those objects now so we can redesign and do those corrections as needed, so it doesn't affect cost when we get out to the field. So we'll won't run into change orders and conflicts with our subcontractors. Trade partner proposals. So in June, we did a mock GMP to kind of solidify what we thought the cost of construction would be. So we actually went out and solicited the plans at a 75% level. So they're not 100% complete, but we felt that they were at a stage where we could solicit to all these subcontractors, and we had tremendous feedback. You can see 165 proposals received. So there's definitely a great interest in y'all's project, which is great.
What's the average that you usually see?
It ranges from maybe 140 to 200. So at this late stage, being 75% set of plans, I would expect when we actually go out for GMP that we'll overachieve on this number. So it's good that we've already received this many bids. We've got people dialed in. They're calling my phone. It's ringing off the hook. Manvel, Manvel, Manvel. So, and kind of what Wale already discussed is we'll go through, we'll tabulate all these proposals, and at the end of the day, we'll have them all kind of lined out on a scope sheet, and we'll go through and analyze each one of them. And we're not going to select necessarily the lowest cost, but we'll analyze each bid, put them through a pre-qual that we have. We use a software called TradeTap, and they'll go through, look at insurance and their recent history, their financials, just to make sure that we won't have any problems with them in the field. And then we'll bring our findings to the team, and we'll come to a consensus together on where we think there's risk in certain proposers or subcontractors, and decide to take those risks, or we feel that we need to alleviate that risk and go with a more competent trade partner. This is just some of the back-end detail building up to what we actually provide in our estimates. So this is all two-dimensional takeoff. Few hours of work here, just taking off the plans, quantifying all the objects. Another quick way that we do this is pretty cool. We'll take that model and, there it goes. Yeah, we'll take the model and we'll be able to virtually quantify all these quantities. So it just allows us to grab a quick snapshot of specific things like doors. First item was the roof. Now it's kind of taking a look at all the glass. So instead of going through and actually taking it off on the plans, we kind of use this as a double check for our quantities. So this is our estimate deliverable. This is real small. It doesn't zoom in anymore, but I'll just kind of look down at the bottom here. There's two numbers. The right-hand column is a previous estimate which was basically a schematic estimate. It was at a DD level, and we were right at 22 million. So that was back in March of this year. Now, since then, our mock GMP, this is what this number has calculated. We're at 21.4, which is roughly about $600,000 less than what we were projecting in March. Reasons for the, I guess, decrease there. There's some items early on in that we might have assumed that weren't actually needed to get to this point as the design had progressed. We had also assumed a factor for escalation, which we'll talk about at the back end of this presentation. But we've got a few dollars in there for escalation to this point. So when we do go to GMP, we'll remove that escalation. So right now it's just in there as a contingency factor until we reach the actual GMP date.
And for that, if you can hang on this slide for a second, because I think this is where a lot of questions might come from. Just wait for it to bounce back on our screens. So reading this, it's about 3.465 over the original estimate of 18 million. And this, let's say the GMP estimate is 21.465. How much of that is contingency?
So contractors' contingency is carried at 2%. That's in the above line portion there. It looks like it's roughly 470,000. That's typical on a job like that, of this size, being that it's a ground up job. There is an allowance in there for permit comments and whatnot that might arise. But that's all that's included in there for contingent. I'm mistaken. There's $100,000 at the very bottom there for escalation. We're carrying 0.5% to carry us through October for any unforeseen escalation and whatnot. So to answer your question, roughly $600,000 of contingency.
Okay, because I believe the debt that we issued for it came out right at 21 million. So if we don't end up utilizing that 600,000 roughly of contingency, it brings us under what was issued because we issued thinking that there would be contingency. You know, I know engineers typically do like 10, 15% contingency. You speak to 2% because that makes me a little bit nervous that there's not enough wiggle room that's in there just in case something happens.
Yeah, so the construction contingency is typically used for undefined items that might pop up. Really, it's not necessarily something that we want to use. Typically, there's dollars built into the above line GMP. We do a very thorough job of scoping each of these subcontractors' proposals, so we don't have to tap into this contingency. There's also intense planning that goes on in the forefront for scheduling and site logistics, and all that's going to be carried within the general conditions number. So I hear your concern, and maybe what you're privy to is 10 to 15%, but typically on GMP's municipal jobs, 2% is the standard that we carry across each of our jobs.
Okay, and what I heard Wale say is that whatever price is agreed to, if you guys go higher than that, it's y'all's responsibility at that point.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we got that taken care of. Okay.
Always on me. He's on me.
Council, do you guys have any questions at this point, or any of the numbers that you've seen so far?
Can you scroll up on that?
Not really.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I've got these numbers pretty much in the back of my head. If there was specific trade
I just
questions.
wanted to see what the whole sheet looked like.
Sure. Yeah, we can forward this on to y'all after the meeting if that's desired. I really wanted to focus on how we got to this number, where we're at, focus on the big picture dollar. And then when we come to the board we'll come to council with a GMP, we can dive in more specifically to items, things that we have seen, the differences in this mock GMP and the actual GMP. But we feel pretty confident in where this number is now, and specifically in some trades, we feel that the number will decrease. And there's usually some pull and tug throughout the majority of the scope. So we might see an increase in some areas and decrease in others. So, but we do feel that that 21.4 number accurately represents where we're currently at.
And Councilman, at that point as well, is when they come back forward for official sign-off and a vote by council, we'll be able to get these documents included in our packet for thorough review in advance. So if y'all could make sure to have that to us, that would be great.
Okay, and this permit comments, 25,000?
Yes, sir.
So that's for all the permits? What about inspection?
This is just for permit comments that might not be picked up in the GMP. So my understanding is we've recently received permit comments back from the city. They're getting incorporated into the documents. They might not have made it into the bid set that we have recently received, but we're working with PGAL and in the city to make sure that we incorporate those comments. If there's anything that pops up after the fact, we can then tap into this $25,000 allowance and account for that. And as far as permitting fees and whatnot, most of those will be picked up by the trades. I don't think we have any specific permits that fall under our scope of work. I think we've assumed that that's, it's a municipal job, so.
And so the plans were at 75%, is that what you said?
Yeah, so we've eclipsed the 75% set. So this was back in June. So since then, PGAL has been working on approaching, I would say, Eric, 95% set of documents. So we're practically there. We're just putting finishing touches on documents. That's really the current status of the construction.
And what was your projected date for completion for total? The total set to be finished, all the drawings ready to go?
Yeah, so we are projecting, I know Dan had mentioned an October deadline, but after talking with Wale and a few others, we were going to bring up possibly bringing a GMP in November, and then a construction start in early January. So we can target that. And the reason for that being is to allow for our staff to free up so we can man the job. And also, we've built in a 17-month schedule. And really, that's long. That's not total construction. We've built in a 2-month procurement window. And we'll get into that stuff on the back end of the presentation. But there's long lead items that we're going to need to procure in order to get this done. So.
We'll talk about the timeline at the end. I have a few questions about that.
Absolutely.
Just one final question that I have here, and excuse my ignorance. Why are we requiring contractors to pay permit fees to the city for a city project?
We don't. It's a zero-cost permit.
Okay. So are we going to exclude that then from the?
Yeah, it will be a part of our exclusion. So a part of our GMP packet will have a basis of estimate, BOE. That's not going to be showcased today, but part of the GMP BOE, it'll have all of our inclusions, exclusions, specific items lined out.
Okay.
That will be a part of that contract. It'll be
There we go. Just dropped it down for you by 25,000. So, all right, I appreciate it. We'll let you continue on now. Thank you.
So all those takeoffs and whatnot, this is what builds into this estimate. There's about 9 pages of detail, probably over 1,000 lines of, specific items that are picked up in this project. So a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into putting these things together, but it looks nice on paper for sure. So really, I'd like to kind of take y'all back in time. I've got a list of slides that go back to the beginning of 2021 and kind of pre-COVID, and just explain what our industry what has happened in our industry, because what has happened probably since y'all have done a large project is astronomical as far as escalation in dollars and things of that nature. So I'll try to keep this short. If I keep on going on with all these things, it gets kind of depressing. But this is what all these slides are going to kind of look like. But this is quarter 3. We'll do quarter updates but this is Q3 of 2021. Just kind of touching on some of the items pre-COVID. When COVID first started, there was a lot of shutdowns, right? We all shut down, and the construction basically stopped. So there was all the suppliers, there was a large demand for all these products, and then the market has kind of been, the construction market as far as projects has been really hot. So there's been a lot of projects, a lot of demand, and since then we really haven't been able to catch up. So this is going to kind of allude to all the problems that we're having that I'm about to discuss. But specifically, Q3, if y'all remember, Hurricane Ida shut down a lot of PVC plants, just plants down on the coast. So that alluded to a large increase in PVC costs. You can see here, steel was one item, a huge item at the beginning of all this that we were really hurting on. 64% in 2021 was the increase in cost there, so real large. So steel, copper, lumber, we all felt that, whether it was the housing market or the commercial market. That's really where it all started. Q4 2021, we started to have a large uptick in oil. So the price of oil nearly doubled in that time frame since the beginning of 2021. We had problems down in the Panama Canal, ships stacking up. Y'all might have remembered those news stories. That's alluding to the demand issues and getting all these ships in with all these materials from overseas. So huge supply chain issue. Once again, the PVC and plastic, 98% since COVID. Just some asinine numbers here. 312% on lumber since COVID. And some of these numbers have come down since this point, but just trying to take y'all back here. 2022, Russian-Ukraine war, all of our imports, exports have halted from them at this point, and that just kind of put us in a bind. Inflation at the highest point since 1982 at nearly 8%. So all these things, huge impacts on us. We had even locally the freeze of 22 in February, if y'all remember that. Up in Dallas, little things like paint. The paint plants were shut down and the cost of paint nearly doubled in that time frame because the supply for that paint completely shut down and we couldn't get paint on our jobs. So it's just absolutely crazy. Q2, inflation rate back up 8.2%. We mentioned that. Labor shortages. 396,000 job openings. So this is what I was talking about. There's a surplus of jobs, but now we're starting to feel the pain of not enough labor and not enough materials to man these jobs. And we start looking at these lead times as well. HVAC equipment is pushing out on schedules, and jobs that are currently being built are not able to receive equipment at this time. And then projects for the future are having to plan in advance, and that's when we're starting to have to adapt to all these different conditions. Q3, concrete allocations across the country, just shortage of concrete. So the price of concrete it went up 5 to 10% in that time frame, and it is continued to increase at that rate till now. We're still dealing with this issue. Chip shortages from overseas in China. And at this time, really the switchgear, ATS generators, lead times a year plus. So when we talk about schedules and building in that 2-month procurement window, we would look to procure those items, switchgear, generator, other long lead mechanical items. Q4, I said it gets kind of depressing the more I keep on talking about it. Long lead items. I mean, if you just look at these items, card readers, 30 to 45 weeks. Automatic transfers, ATS. This is part of the generator system. 52 to 70 weeks. This is a huge problem for police stations, right? We have a large generator on this job, and these generators are on back order, and we have no control of, there at this time, back in 22, there was no way to, pay someone a little extra money to get us to the front of the line. There's no favors to be handed out at this time. Now there's different ways that we can expedite certain materials, but some materials still have those issues, those super long lead items. More life events. The earthquake in Syria, India, increased our problem with concrete. 40% of our imports for byproducts of concrete come from there, India. So that earthquake that happened basically shut that down. So we felt that here back home with the concrete, along with the allocations that we were already dealing with. So with all that being said, this is kind of our track sheet. And if you just kind of look to the right, this takes it from almost the beginning of COVID, May 2021, to September 22. And that right column kind of shows you the increases we've seen over time in those specific trades. So just highlighting a few, the largest one on here, gypsum and acoustical ceilings. 300%, that's crazy. Metal studs, 340%, that's influx of, the metal in this market has just been absolutely off the charts. But, this year and what we've seen, typically in these times from the beginning of 21 to 22, we were seeing about 1.5% per month in escalation. Now, I think we've seen it tailor off. Some things are still rising like concrete, but steel has started to come back down. But now our escalation meter is back down to about, the standard is 0.5% per month. That's what it was before all this. Now we're, back at 0.75% a month, which is about half of what we were seeing during this time. So really just wanted to give y'all an update on the market. I don't know if y'all have had an in-depth presentation like that on, different materials and whatnot, but definitely open to answering any of your questions.
I appreciate that update. Thank you so much. And hey, Russ, if you guys need a luncheon speaker for the chamber at some point about the construction market update, looks like you guys have someone here. Dan and the team, do you guys have anything that you'd like to add? Any additional information? Come on up, Chief. Looking all dapper tonight.
Well, I just wanted to apologize for being late. I'm overbooked myself this week. I don't know what was said earlier about the building and stuff, but I wanted to reiterate the construction manager at risk and the reason why we went this route instead of a bid process. I know Wale touched on it a little bit, but when you look at the bid process, you get what you get. With a construction manager at risk, with a project of this magnitude, the city has a little bit of say in picking contractors and selecting how this project is going to come about. We felt when we looked at both sides of it that this was going to be the best option to go because it gives the city some say in the construction project. When this building was built you're sitting in right now, there was no say. It was a bid process. The construction company got the bid, they built it, and we had no say-so in it. We've been working on this project for quite some time. I know the joke going around that I keep saying 2030, it's just a joke. And the reason I was actually promised a new police department 2 years after I started here. Here it is 8 years later, and we're fixing to cross that threshold. But it's really embarrassing, and I guess, you know, there is some frustration on my part that it's taken us 3 years to get to this point when I see other buildings and other police agencies, city halls such as that are going up and being built, people are fixing to move in. And here we are still sitting around talking about it. It's aggravating that I've got men and women of this police department that work out of a building that you could fit inside this room, that we're sitting in 2 construction trailers. The building's not hardened, it's not secured. In the world we live in right now, that's just, it's ridiculous to have a police department working in an area they're working right now. When we start looking at the building we've designed, it's a 50-year building. The building is designed to be here for 50 years. It's not designed to add on to in 10 years. You start looking at construction costs, what we're paying for this building or what we could be paying for this building right now, if we cut back and we start adding on to it because we can't afford it right now, you're going to look at 10 to 15 million each time we add on to it. It's just going to increase the cost of this building. It just, for construction purposes, it just doesn't make sense. So when we looked at the building, we looked at it as a 50-year building. It's going to be a building here that's going to outlive me. I'm going to be long gone by the time we move out of this building. It's a hardened building. It's a building that's going to be here in the event that we have, heaven forbid, we have a hurricane that come right down on top of us. There's a select few of people around here that don't leave. And right now, to put them in a place to work out of, the police department, is very scary because I don't know what the construction is on that building. I don't know if that roof's going to stay on top if something comes through. But yet we're sitting here having to work out of a building that's not a hardened building in emergency situations. I just want to put it in perspective that if any of y'all have never been over to see what we have, all you got to do is give me a call. I'll take you around and I'll show you exactly what we're having to work out of. And I know I have had Larry over there a couple of times. I think the mayor's been over there a couple of times. Crystal's been over and visited with me in my trailer. But it's I can't say enough of what we're working in is ridiculous. It's not safe for the officers. It's not safe for the people that are working in it. The other day I walked out of the office and looked out there and one of my investigators was dusting fingerprints on the railing. A piece of evidence, dusting it, because we have no place to process evidence. So when y'all start looking at this and considering this, I hope y'all take into mind what we're looking at and what this police department of a city this size is having to work out of. And I just offer that, you know, that there is a need, there's a desperate need for it. And if we don't do it now, and we don't build what we've designed now, then it's going to be more costly in the long run, and it's going to basically hold us back as a police agency of what we can provide for the city. And with that, I'll answer any questions y'all might have.
Chief, thank you for that. And I think I can speak on behalf of myself and everybody up here that we agree 100% with what you just said, and we're behind you guys. A question that I would have for you to kick things off here is, how do you feel about how the process has gone so far working with CORE? I'll state my frustrations and my concern is that we've had CORE under contract for a year now. Our city manager just said that we're hoping to have something on October 2nd, but then we heard that it might be another month. And it just seems like it's been pushed back month after month after month. When I got elected in May, I was hearing comments of, oh, it's almost ready. It's almost ready. It's almost ready. And this brings me concern about CORE's ability to deliver according to the timeline of 17 months as what's been proposed tonight. How do you feel? Do you feel confident? Are you uncomfortable? What are your thoughts?
I have a lot of, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there. I have a lot of frustration in the fact that it's taking so long to get this process underway. It seems like every time we have conversations about it, it's pushed off a month here, pushed off a month there, pushed off 2 months here. And it's one reason after the other, whether we haven't got the architect designs to the construction company on time. There's a lot of variables that are going in that I don't know about that and I'm not throwing this on Wale, but Wale is the project manager. He's the one that's been working with the construction company, PGAL, trying to keep this project moving. But I don't understand, and maybe it's just my thoughts on it is, being this is one, I've gone through renovation projects. I've had it on the police stations. I've been part of that project, but never a full-blown build from the ground up. So I guess my aggravations and my frustrations are, we've been working on this for a year now with CORE, with PGAL, trying to get the plans out, trying to get everything where it needs to be, trying to get the cost where it needs to be. And I understand the cost is I'll be honest, and I'm just going to throw it out here. I don't think that council was given a good amount, or it was a good amount back 3 years ago for the cost of this building, but because construction costs have risen so much, so fast, that we're behind when it comes to the cost of the building. I think the construction costs have escalated beyond a point of where that estimated cost was going to be, and we didn't adjust for it. That's just my thoughts. I'm not in the construction business. I'm not in the architect business. All I know is there was an amount that was given. That amount, I was told at one point in time we had 22 million to build this building. The next day I came in, we had 21 million. And I'm trying to figure out where that other million went. Don't know where it went. That's just what I was told. So I'm trying to figure out where we're going to come up with this money for this building. We were first told that it could cost 18 million to build it. Well, that was based off, in my opinion, off projections of 3-4 years ago, maybe. I don't know. But I know that construction costs have gone up. The economy we're living in right now, it's more difficult to get the items, is like what John was saying. There's a lead time on everything trying to get the equipment in here, which is frustrating in itself. But when we start talking about the project and building of the project, I'm not happy with it. I'm not satisfied with it. I think we should have broke ground. I was told we were going to be breaking ground in August. We can have a GMP in June. I might have misunderstood what they said. But my understanding was we were going to have a GMP in June. We were going to be breaking ground in August. And here we are in September, October. Now we're talking about breaking ground in January again. I was told 2 years ago we might be breaking ground in January of this year. It hadn't happened. And I've vented my frustrations and vocalized my frustrations on why it's taking so long to get this project off the ground. And it's mainly because we're trying to hit a target number that we're not going to be able to hit, because that's what the number was 3 years ago. That's not what the number is today. And that's one of my biggest frustrations right now.
And if I could help maybe reconcile, if you're wondering, we just heard 21.4 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. Well, we budgeted 20, we've got 21 that we went out for COs is 21.4. What's the problem? We're close. Well, that doesn't include FF&E, right? Furniture, fixture, and equipment. So you've got another 2 million, 3, 4 million worth of equipment that goes inside of these buildings. Obviously it's a police station. It's not like a regular building, a very specific thing. So that's, if you're wondering where the delta is, like, what's the problem? That's the problem.
And just to talk a little bit about that, when we start talking about the FF&E in this particular project, Wale, I, and Eric is our architect that's been working with us. Project manager on this, architect, is that what your title is? Yeah. But he's been working with us very closely with it for several years now. And it's when we start talking about the FF&E budget, there are areas in that we can pull back on, because we're not going to have the personnel to fill some of these offices. There's some areas we can look at on that. We've already actually pulled back a little bit, say like in the locker rooms, because we've designed it for 180 personnel, because that's what the build out is. So we've kind of pulled back on the lockers that we've designed it to where we can add the lockers when we have personnel. Same thing with some of the offices. We can add some of the furniture when we did. So we've kind of pulled back a little bit on that. Do I like that? No, I don't like that. But in order to reduce the cost of the FF&E, that's something we looked at doing. And it's not going to affect the operations of the police, if that makes sense. So, in other words, if I hire an assistant chief, then I can bring in, okay, now we're going to bring in the desk for the assistant chief, the computer systems and all that. That's the kind of the direction we were going. Me personally, if it was up to me, we would build it, we'd furnish it, and we would just move people in. But in order to bring that cost down, that's some of the things we were looking at. And I hate bringing it up like that, but it doesn't affect the operation of the police by doing it that way. There is a huge cost on it. When you start looking at evidence lockers, how to secure evidence such as that, that's a huge cost when it comes to that, because evidence lockers are specific. Our crime lab equipment is specific in what they do. There has to be specific ventilation. There has to be things that we have to meet OSHA standards to keep people from passing out when they use neon hydrant spray. That stuff is pretty nasty. Same thing with fingerprint dust. I don't know if you ever seen anybody dust fingerprints, but you take that little brush out and you do that, you just got a cloud of black dust everywhere. So there's a lot of variables that goes into it. The same thing with the jail. We're going to have a full jail facility. That is very cost prohibitive. We have to have specialized things in the jail. It doesn't have your normal doors with normal locks on them. There are specific things that we have to have in the jail to meet specific state standards. So the building in itself, it has a lot of things in it that you wouldn't see in any other building. And that's why the cost is where it is. Along with the construction, it's frustrating that, to answer your question, yes, I'm frustrated. I'm aggravated. We should be in the building by now. And when I see people under my command that are out on the railing dusting for fingerprints, out on the back porch on the 55-gallon drum processing evidence, or we have to hang evidence out to dry on the back porch, it loses any integrity of everything we're doing. And it's to me, it's just ridiculous that a police department of a city of this size has to work in conditions like that.
Yeah. And Chief, I share your frustrations. I know in talking with Wally, he shares your frustrations. And I think core, hopefully you've heard the frustrations here tonight as well. As I manage projects, we look at things over different horizons and dependencies based off of phases. And there's my opinion, as a project manager by trade, we should be able to start to move forward with the construction of this building while we still figure out the equipment. There should be nothing that is slowing down this construction while we wait for the equipment. And Chief, I agree with you. We will work on that. But I want to see something on the agenda for October 2nd. Listening to our chief standing here petitioning on the behalf of every single officer and every single employee of the police department. We need to see something on October 2nd. We need to take action on that. Because it's time. It's time to get moving. It's time to deliver something that you've been told over the past 8 years. It needs to come to fruition now. Council, any other questions, comments?
I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, sir?
John.
John. Okay, so with them, we have that budget, and if it goes over, it's on them, right? That's great. What about timeline? What if the timeline, do we have a guaranteed timeline as well as the guaranteed budget? I mean, because this presentation here, I understand all the delays. Trust me, I'm a builder too. I understand all the delays, but I'm almost worried that that's setting us up for, okay, well, we're going to have delays because of our product. We're trying to get a product. So can you guarantee a timeline, or can you give us hard numbers? Okay, gypsum's coming in here, AC's coming in here. Are you going to be able to do that, some kind of format like that for us?
To answer your question, from the beginning, we've promised the 17-month schedule in a more detailed format that will come after the GMP. We'll have a preliminary construction schedule, and then once we have our staff at the job, we'll deliver that detailed schedule. And yes, the goal is to hit those dates as comes, but as things change and whatnot, as you understand, right, deadlines change. And as far as commitment, yes, our commitment is 17 months. The contract does have liquidated damages. That's not something that we want to partake in. So we're promising the job within 17 months of executed contract and permit and mobilization on the job.
So, because I mean, some of the things you presented, understandably, they're out a lot further than 17 months on getting the things that we're probably going to need on this project. So how soon are y'all going to try to, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how you're going to be able to do this in 17 months, actually, with, y'all going to hit the ground running, day one, start buying product that's not going to be installed for
Absolutely.
15 months?
Yeah, so every month we have a meeting with our project team, and the goal is to buy the job out within 60 days.
Okay,
So day one, we're going to hit the job, we're going to buy out those long lead items. And even when we get into our budgeting process and we're taking proposals from these guys, we'll start to talk to them, and maybe we get comfortable with an electrician before we actually bring it to approval. We can start ironing out subcontract agreements, and because these vendors need an ironed out subcontract agreement, PO from these guys. So really the ball's in our court once we get all those items executed and our clock starts.
Gotcha.
But yeah, as soon as we get it, we want to hit the ground running, because no one survives in this market if you don't.
right.
If you sit on your butt. So,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Any other questions, comments from council? So do we have, because I've heard words like promised, commitment, goals. Do we have anything contractually that states the 17-month timeline? Nothing, okay.
Until we issue the second phase of this contract with the GMP, that's when we'll call out the timeline, we'll call out the LEs associated.
And that would be built in as an addendum or an exhibit that's tied to the contract, and then if push comes to shove, we could participate in the liquidated damages if the timeline's not met. Okay. I told you, John, we were going to put you through the ringer a little bit tonight.
It's all great questions. I totally understand where y'all are at.
Any other questions, comments, council, staff?
I just have a clarification question.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for that very in-depth presentation. I always have questions, so hope y'all enjoyed your break last week with me gone. I heard our chief say multiple times that he's extremely frustrated, and I remember a conversation that I had with him many months ago before I was even in the seat, and he expressed that same frustration. And so in your own words, could you just clarify for me why that timeline has been pushed out so much? Is it literally because of the $4 million and the FFE that's holding that back, or what specifically is it?
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind is back in March when we presented our initial number, and we had backed it up with a lot of trade partner input, and it was just a shock. And I mean, Wale, Eric, everyone, eyes just, huge, right? So I think from March until this mock GMP point, in that time frame, we were analyzing different options and trying to peel back this number, but we kept on getting feedback from Chief and saying that we wanted this whole building, and we looked at different options, but that's not the way the city wanted to go, is what we were going. So in that time frame where we're going back and forth, I think we kind of had design on hold while we were working on figuring out these budgets, but at the same time, to answer your question, it's really the budget, I would say, was the biggest driver. There are some things maybe on our side that may have slipped through the cracks. Being, estimate deliveries, I would have loved to got in front of y'all even sooner, if possible. But I think the concern with the budget and understanding where we're coming from, those questions couldn't have been answered at that point. Mm-hmm. So, and typically how we do these jobs is we like to come to y'all with a path back to the budget, but I think,
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so thank you for that. And then the other thing that came to mind is I heard you say we will start on some relationships with, for instance, electrician contractors and other contractors. Don't you already have some very vetted relationships in the industry that you could say, okay, we know these are good to go, and kind of save that time to help us stick on track and get this project going?
Absolutely. Yeah. So
okay.
We've completed a recent project in Friendswood. We renovated their police station, their public safety building. And we've already been in contact with those same trade partners that we've worked with there So we've targeted some contractors, but at the same time, not closing it off to just those guys, because that would be a disservice to the city, not allowing multiple.
I think we all agree that if the decision was made to go with CORE and to work with CORE, then I think we all stand in solidarity and in the agreement that we would hope that this project gets the utmost respect and time that it needs so that we can get that done. And I totally understand that when budgets don't match, you got to find out where you're going to get the money. Where are we going to get the money from? How are we going to do this project, especially with what you just presented? Totally understandable. But it's extremely important to us in the city of Manvel, and I believe everyone here on council, that we obviously meet these deadlines, and that's going to be something that we're going to all want to stick to. So just wanted to get that directly from you, and thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
All right, John, I think that wraps up this piece of the portion of the conversation, so appreciate it. Thank you. What I'll propose, council, is we've just got a few minutes here until the regular meeting. We'll go ahead and just, we will call this workshop to a close and then reconvene in a few minutes for the regular meeting. Sound good? All right. Thanks, everyone. Well, good evening, everyone. I will call to order this regular city council meeting on September 18th at 6:04 p.m. We have all 7 elected officials here, and for the invocation tonight, I would like to call forward Pastor Luis Martinez, who is going to lead us in the invocation. So if you'll please come forward right here at the podium, just tell us who you are, your church, a little bit about yourself, and then lead us in a prayer.
I'm Luis Martinez. I'm the pastor of Call to Care Community Church right here on the premises of First Baptist Manvel. I've been living in the area now for quite 11 years, being married for 22 years, 2 beautiful university students. They're no more teenagers. They're both 20 and 21 right now. So that's who I am, and glad to be here. Thanks for the invitations, and this is a time where I believe that God has raised up Mayor Davis for such a position where we can find a place to give God thanks in the midst of government officials. So that is a blessing, and I want to commend you on that and bring in prayer into this environment. God bless you. If you don't mind, I will share a little story before I give the invocation. There was a little girl in the classroom with X amount of students. But the professor was asking to give the name of a big animal. So as the professor asked to give the name of a big animal, there are many students who was raising their hands. And there was this little girl that was sitting right in front of the professor, but he keep passing over this little girl. So the first student that gave the answer, he said, a big elephant, good. A lion, good. But he keep passing over this little girl. So finally he came to the little girl and he said, okay, Emanuela, you give your answer. She said, a big fish. The professor said, what big fish? She said, the big fish that swallowed Jonah. She said, well, that's not true because a fish have a very small throat. And I'm a zoologist, and a fish cannot swallow a human. The student said, well, you are the professor. I'm not going to argue with you. But when I get to heaven, I will ask Jonah. The professor said, and what if Jonah is not there? She said, well, when you get to hell, you ask him. The reason why I share this is because in this time, it is important for every one of us, not only government officials, but we are faced so much with so much trial. We're faced with so much depression. And we must have something that catapults us over the hurdle so we can find our place of comfort. So what is it that catapults you over your hurdle? I think laughter, peace, and joy is very important for us to have. We never want to lose that. We could lose everything else, but let us maintain our joy to catapult us over the hurdle so we can get to our next destination. Let us pray. Father, we thank you. You are God and you are God alone. You are holy and you are mighty. And we honor you for who you are. You are everlasting. And Father, we thank you for every government official in this building today. We pray, God, for the wisdom. We pray, Father, for the courage. We pray, oh God, for the leadership. And we pray, oh God, for their intellect, that as you use their intellect, as you use them to that capacity, that there will be joy in serving their people and their community. And there will be protection, oh God, as you lead them, as you protect them, as you guide them. We pray, oh Father, that for courage, that they will never back down from any challenge once they know, God, that you supported their decision and you stand with them. Help us to understand and to be free, oh God, from every type of corruption and every type of evil deeds that displeases you. Help us to stand in agreement with your promise. In a special way, God, I want to lift up Mayor Davis. I want to thank you for him. Thank you for the position that you has him in. Thank you for his home, his family, oh God. Be gracious to him. And I pray in a special way for his family, that you will give them the strength and the courage that they will not grow weary in well-doing, that they will always watch over him and see, oh God, that he is in the right standard that he needs to be in as he leads your people. So God, we thank you for all the people who stand behind him, his cabinet, oh God, his secretaries, his staff, his police officers, his chief of police, everyone that stand in his corner. We pray for them, oh God, that they will be the support that he needs to provide the kind of leadership that you have called him into. So God, may your peace, may your love, may your grace, and may your mercy rest upon this office. And may each and every one that pass this place will know that the presence of the Lord is in this place. So God, we thank you, and we thank you for hovering over us and over this office. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate you being here tonight. We will now move on to the invocation, or that we just did that, so we'll move on to the inspirational reading, which is Mayor Pro Tem Hudson.
Yes, good evening, everyone. People acting together as a group can accomplish things which no individual acting alone could ever hope to bring about. This is a passage from a book from Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Thank you, sir. If everyone will please join me in standing and saying our pledges. Thank you, everybody. You can be seated. We will now move on to the public hearing. So I will read out the entirety of the public hearing. We've had some comments that have been submitted for the public hearing, which I'll read out, and then we'll open it up to anybody who wishes to speak during the public hearing that is here tonight. So the public hearing, which will open at 6:12, is to hear input on the 2023 tax year proposed property tax rate. A tax rate of 0.560707 per $100 valuation has been proposed by the governing body of the City of Manvel. Proposed tax rate 0.560707 per 100. The no new revenue tax rate 0.496003 per 100. The voter approval tax rate is 0.560708 per 100. The proposed tax rate is not greater than the voter approval tax rate. As a result, the City of Manvel is not required to hold an election at which the voters may accept or reject the proposed tax rate. So we will read off the comments now. The first is from Tabitha Wilson at 18605 Brookside Ridge. Mayor, Council, I'm sorry I am unable to attend this City Council meeting. Unfortunately, the timeframes in which y'all hold the council meetings and my work schedule interfere. However, I would like to address the possible rate increase. I wasn't particularly happy knowing we are going to possibly pay $190 plus dollars a year extra into tax. But if I understand the charts, it is still a lower rate than last year, so I will make that compromise. But where I won't budge is raising the water and sewer rates. Mayor and Council understand our rates are higher than Pearland Water and Sewer, as well as Webster. I moved from my home in Webster a little over 2 years ago, and may I say I believe I am starting to regret my decision. I'm glad we are bringing in commercial buildings to a small town, but what I don't understand is how you want to raise the water and sewer rates over 18%. And that's not including the per household gallon usage afterwards. Mayor campaigned making all these promises. Right now, it's looking like things are taking a turn for the worse. How is it some of us are barely able to make it by now? But hey, it's okay. The city will take on another $100+ to your water bill. I'm appalled by this. The water itself seems to be killing our grass and plants with how much chlorine is in it. I'm sorry, but when I'm watering my plants, I really do not believe I should smell the fumes. Keep the rates as it is. Keep the tax rate at 56 cents. Stop trying to run us all out of the city. Thank you, Tabitha, for the comments. Next, we will go to Mark Anthony at 8005 Jordan. He says, I hope you all know what you're doing. Evidently, our mayor didn't when he was campaigning that the city has continued to raise taxes each year. But from the previous council meetings, it has been shown to the citizens that has not been the case. It seems the folks in City Hall know what they are doing and have lowered the percentage each year. Know your facts, Mr. Davis. I'll be honest and say I'm okay with the dang tax rate. I knew coming to Manvel it was going to be a little bit more pricey. I mean, y'all, come on. It's a city on the rise. Look at all this development. Y'all complain there is nothing for the city, and when infrastructure comes in, let's complain to Dan Davis. And he may wave his magic wand to fix all the problems. Mayor, as I mentioned, the tax rate is fine. The budget may need some tweaking, but overall I approve. What I don't approve is your dang water and sewer rates. Now, this is what's going to drive out the citizens. In Webster, they do a combination in water, sewer, and even trash pickup for half the cost of the water bill itself. Now, tell me, why are we raising them rates? What to extend piping and lines on other streets? Shouldn't that be a line item in your budget? We're being taxed enough, Mayor. The city and council need to understand that this is robbery. If the city is on the rise, lower the dang water rates. I mean, no offense, the sewer rates aren't even justified. Thank you, Mr. Anthony, for your comments. Next, we have Joy Weitzman. No address was given. Absolutely not. This is a disgrace to see. Raise the taxes, whatever, I'll deal with it. But the water and sewer rate, this is an absolute joke. Why are the rates going up? And who is freezing nickel? I mean, why are the rates going up so drastically? Honestly, is it to extend piping, as your city engineers persist on doing? Why should us residents have to suffer with an increase of 15% or more? This is disgusting. Please get things straightened out. Thank you, Joy. Next, we have Cash Warren at 6410 Blue Valley. Mayor, I am highly disappointed to read on your social media about the sewer and water rates going up. It's beyond ridiculous to believe that you are raising the sewer rate, and for what? The water already tastes like you pour thousands of gallons of chlorine in it. It's probably the reason our grass and plants outside are dying. I understand the tax rate being raised as it will help the city grow, but what I can't wrap my head around is why we are getting an increasement on the water bill. What is, I'm not going to say that word, of intermittent leaks? I think this is becoming more and more bogus to hear. Personally, if you raise the rates, this should be something the citizens should be able to vote on. What's also sad is this is no warning on any of the city's social media of upcoming possible changes. Heck, it would be nice to see the agenda posted on the Facebook every now and then. Tell me, what was the point in filling out that citizen survey if you are doing nothing with it? I can tell you the folks over here are getting tired of the only thing the city page posts is shared post. Then you have the PD who only share about restaurant stores or people bringing them food. Occasionally you'll see where they share a new officer, but what does the city actually post? I wish there was more activities the city would host and post about. I wish the city was more welcoming and informative. Thank you for your comments, Cash. Next, we have the final written comment, which is from Jared Jennings, live at 17 Sapiro Drive. As noted in the materials, the proposed tax rate increases property tax revenue by $1.9 million over the previous year, which is an addition to last year's increase of $1.4 million from the notice. A tax rate of 0.560707 per 100. Valuation has been proposed by the governing body of the City of Manvel. The voter approval rate is 0.560708 per 100. That 0.000001 difference between the proposed rate and the voter approval rate is exactly 1/3 of a penny on a $300,000 home, 1/3 of 1 cent. By contrast, Mayor Davis, the no new revenue rate you so fervently preach would be a difference of $194.11 over the proposed rate. For someone that promised to lower taxes and push the no new revenue rate so loudly and passionately on the campaign trail, this is egregious. It's further troubling because you have made absolutely zero effort to show that same drive against the tax rate now that you've been elected. What happened to the trumpets of your campaign? It's almost as if you only use the tax rate as a talking point to stoke the raging fires of taxpayers for votes, and once that end was reached, you put away the soapbox and silenced those trumpets. Your position ebbs and flows depending on the political current. I guess the tide is out. And in familiar fashion, you sit there about to vote against a tax rate you know will pass because it has a supermajority in favor. And next time the tide rolls in for election season, you can dust off your soapbox, raise those trumpets once again, and preach again about the failure of local government. You'll point out, as you have before, that the money is in the budget, and if City Council wanted to keep the tax payments the same, they would adopt the no new revenue rate. You'll grandstand on your inconsequential voting record and hang your peers on City Council out to dry, dragging them through the mud because they voted to raise taxes and you didn't, just as you did before. So what I'll do now is I will call, if anybody is here in attendance that would like to speak for the public hearing, I will do the first call. Anybody that wishes to speak, please come forward. Second call. And third call. Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Fair that they blame you for everything when the old rhinos in the old administration screwed this up. When I was on council, I told them, you want to keep the water low and the sewer low? Do not allow subdivisions. Make a subdivision on acreage. That way you have your own water well and your own sewer well. And when your electric rate goes up, because you got the bill from the water pump and then you got the bill on the sewer pump, who are you going to complain at? So if you guys want to make a difference on this issue, from now on whatever land it's open, do not allow subdivision on a cookie cutter land. Put it on an acre, and they need to build their own water well and sewer. And if they don't like it, then don't live in a subdivision. Move out on acreage like other people did. But I'm sure, well, I'm not going to say it anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaspar. We will do the final call for anybody wishing to speak for this public hearing. Okay, we will close the public hearing at 6:20 p.m. We will now move to public comments, and we have one comment card that is submitted from Mr. Adrian Gaspar. So, Adrian, if you could state your name and address, and then Brooke's going to be putting 3 minutes up on the monitors for you.
Adrian Gaspar, 8317 Cook Road. I want to start by saying thank you. Thank you for what you guys did. You guys did a lot more in the short time that you've been here than the 8 years that the old regime had. The only thing they did is raise our taxes. Yes, so what? You guys raised the water and sewer? You know, that's what happens when you live in a subdivision. Second thing, okay, I'll give you an example. When I left the police department in Houston, rape kits were 5 years behind. Violent crime evidence was 3 years behind. A lot of cases were getting dismissed, and the lawyers knew that. It's because they couldn't process the evidence. So when it comes to the police department, do your best and listen to the police chief, because he's the one that knows the odds and ends. Do that, like he was talking about evidence. You gotta have a chain of evidence if you wanna present it in court. Otherwise, you're gonna lose the case. And somehow, I think that if you specify every time there is an election, say, hey, we need a 3% pay raise or a tax increase because we want to give the police department 3% for the officers, and if there's anything left, you can give it towards their budget, because the computer system is one of the most important thing. And now they have what's called live screen, that they actually know exactly when the crime happens, within like seconds, and they're able to dispatch the PD. I know it's going to cost a lot of money. If you want to save city, this is the time to invest in the police department, because once you lose that, forget it, you'll never be able to recuperate. Alzheimer kicks in. Third point I wanted to make. Oh yeah, I heard that somebody complain about us praying. Well, I have something for that person. My rights as a U.S. citizen do not end where its feelings begin. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a moot point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaspar, and good job staying under the 3 minutes. So appreciate that. So that concludes our public comments. We will now go to the city manager update. Dan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure that I'll be under the 3 minutes. I've got 9 things that I want to brief you on, but they should go quickly. The first one is actually on the agenda. It's the building code effectiveness grading classification. Just wanted to give you a pretty exciting update on that. And Jessica, if you're still okay to give that report, I'd appreciate it.
So the city has received a building code effectiveness grading which is with the ISO of a grade 4 for our commercial and industrial, and a grade 4 from 1 and 2 family residential. The ISO scores are graded from 1 being the best and 10 being not recognized with any sort of enforcement with our building codes. So it's done in a manner of looking at how communities enforce those codes. Assessments place emphasis on mitigations from any sort of natural hazards. Municipalities that have well-enforced or up-to-date codes and demonstrate, which should demonstrate better loss experience. It's reflected in your insurance rates. So lessening catastrophe-related damage and ultimately lowering insurance costs, and provides an incentive for communities that enforce their building codes. It's graded on 4 criteria. That's background data, code administration, building plan review, and field inspections. So we recently received that and got the certification. It's done every 5 years. We look at that. So there could be an opportunity, since we did adopt some new codes there and some other training and specialization that we can do, that we can increase that number better than 4. So.
And those rates go directly towards our insurance rates, of course. So I believe there's 3 components. There's the fire, the building, and then the flood. So we want those numbers to be as low as possible for our home insurance rates. So anyway, that's some great news. Second one, I wanted to really thank, staff wanted to thank the mayor and Councilman Lands for our luncheon last week. For those that know, council does get a stipend each month. It's not much. It's really to kind of help them pay gas and, do what they need to do in the course of their business. And they chose to donate their monies towards a luncheon for the staff, which we ate all of it, quite frankly. It was fantastic. Thank you to Honore Seafood for bringing that great red beans and rice and gumbo and everything. So anyway, we really, truly appreciate that. Sorry you didn't get to join us, but Larry was there in your stead. Hope that was okay. I said free lunch. Larry was there. Staff is still working on a couple of ordinances that we've been talking about. The one that's the closest to that we are closest to bringing to you is the mobile food truck ordinance. We're working on that at the staff level, but also sent it out to we've got about 12 mobile food trucks that are registered right now. So we sent that ordinance out to them to see if they had any last minute input. So that one, I feel like it should be coming to you at the next meeting. Hopefully also the special events ordinance update, just a few tweaks to that one. The one that's going to take a little bit longer is the fence permit ordinance. I think, Councilman Lands, we talked about that a little bit. We got to go through a public hearing process, I guess, because it's got a component related to the zoning ordinance. But just wanted to let you know we are working on those 3. Certainly hadn't forgot. Also wanted to let you know that Brooke and Wale and Mary in our Public Works Department, they just went to a grants workshop last week. This wasn't a grant writing workshop, but more of a grant management workshop. So this was kind of one of the 2 heads of looking for grant opportunities, which we actually have one that we'll talk about later this evening. So I don't know if you wanted to share anything about that, Brooke, or just that you went.
Yes, it was really informative. It's going to be really exciting to look at grant opportunities moving forward. So it was great to be able to go out there. We were up in Humble, so.
Yep, so glad that they got to do that. SMDA meeting this Wednesday at 4, if you're interested in coming to that. Teen Court is on Thursday at 4:30. And then, Brooke, one more time, you want to mention the end of the Summer Spectacular?
Yes, we just wanted to remind everybody that the end of Summer Spectacular is this Saturday. It's going to be at Croy Park from 3 to 7. There's going to be food trucks, games, fun, all kinds of stuff. So we just wanted to invite everybody to come on out.
That's it. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, everyone, for the update. And I think that's great to hear, Brooke, Wale, and Mary, that you guys went to that, and look forward to seeing how we can put that into practice. Do I have any comments or questions from council about the consent agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? I'll make a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. We will now move on to the regular agenda, as there are no items removed from the consent agenda. So this is consideration and possible action to approve on first reading ordinance 2023-0-32. And so I believe that this is this the budget vote, Dan? Or that would happen with number 2?
This is the budget, correct, Timmy? Yes.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll turn this over to Dan and Rosie to give us an update, just if anything's changed from our last meeting, and just kind of an overview of where they're at. Before we do that, I just want to say I appreciate everybody's work. This has been a labor of love, and there's a lot of good things that are included within this budget. I hope that everybody has seen on council, staff, and the community that we're taking a collaborative approach with the budget. That it's something that we want to be accountable, we want to be transparent and open and work together on finding what's best for the community. So I look forward to working with everybody to implement this back to the basics budget. But with that, Dan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So since the first budget that was presented to you on August 1st, that preliminary proposed budget included 42 out of the 56 supplemental items that we had identified. It included a 3% cost of living adjustment and no new staffing positions. All of the department heads came and presented to you their needs after doing an internal needs assessment. And so the next proposed budget that you received on August 18th included then 47 out of the 56 supplemental items. So we were able to find a few more, but we also were able to add a 3% market or performance adjustment for each, the budget equivalent of an additional 3% for each employee. And also 8 new staffing positions. So those we've talked about at the last meeting. So the most recent updates that you've got before you for the annual budget is we were also able to add the dependent insurance coverage as council had recommended. If you recall, we had a very small window because the open enrollment closed August 30th. So the folks that were able to take advantage of that were able to do so. And some were able to grab the 50% because they just started, and some were able to get the full 100%. So it was a huge benefit. So we thank you again for that, Council. And then the other thing that's recognized in the most recent budget is the clawback that SMDA approved at their last meeting. So right now, the fund balance transfer is just a little bit over $600,000 in this current budget, but it leaves us, let me pull this up. It's page 31 in your budget. So it leaves us still with a fund balance of 7.7 million, we'll say, which is about 55% of fund balance reserve or 200 days of coverage. So we're not completely balanced per se, but we will balance with transferring some of the some from fund balance to cover those 47 items, I believe I said, 47 of the 56 supplemental items. So really no new surprises, just some numbers that we had estimated kind of along the way. We had overestimated on the benefits, the dependent coverage, I should say. So that number was a little bit less. We can get in the details if you want to know, but we had to be conservative, and then the actual number was a little bit less. We also underestimated on TERS clawback and administrative fees, so that actually came out to the good. So we had a couple of good things happening in this latest budget that you've got before you. Rosie, anything else you want to add on to that? Okay. So we're happy to answer any questions you have, Mary.
Absolutely. One thing that I'll add before we open it up to questions is that something that staff has done, I think this is good for council to note and for the community, is that as they've been going throughout this budget and reviewing it in preparation for tonight, there have been opportunities to reallocate funds to identify, okay, in past years we set this amount in this line item and we don't actually need that amount in that line item. So many times you hear people's perspective of government is just spend more, because that's what they see in DC and that's what they see in Austin. But Rosie and others have really gone through with the department heads to say, where can we trim? And then what's the difference between a need to have and a nice to have? So I appreciate y'all's work there. Before we get to the, I guess you could refer to as the exhibit that I asked to be included with tonight's budget, does anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like to start off with? Yes, sir.
How are we doing with permits and sales tax?
Yeah, so that is, again, that's a great question, Councilman Acree. That's a projection. It's a number that is not for sure, unlike the ad valorem number that is a little more certain. New permits, it's our, just like a demographic researcher, it's our best scientific guess on what's going to happen. We don't want to overestimate and we don't want to underestimate. So we think, Valencia is ready to get started in earnest, as is Manvel Town Center. So we know that those two are happening. But, will it be all of Manvel Town Center next year? Probably not. Will it be all of Valencia's 400? Maybe. They're ready to jump on it quickly. So we've driven ourselves crazy trying to have that crystal ball, and that this is the best we've got right now. I don't know if that helps, but it's just the honest answer. We don't know. We can't make someone develop.
What about sales tax?
So same thing. So, sales tax is tricky, and I'm putting together a development summary, so that y'all can see at a glance of all of the different 380s and TERS that are out there, because very few dollars or $1 of sales tax comes right back to the city. Most of them have some type of a development agreement where the developer gets to keep, half of it until they get reimbursed. So.
And I think, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, permits, issuance of permits is down this year compared to years past, which is why you see the estimated conclusion of this year's budget, which is updated as through August, is, a little bit less than what was initially projected. So a conservative approach was taken with permits. Now, sales tax revenue this year compared to last year, year to date, according to the Comptroller's Office, which it always lags 2 months behind, is up 23%. So about $300,000 more in sales tax revenue for the city. So that's up, but you never know what can happen. So you monitor that, and it's always 2 months in the lag as well.
And we did see a little slowdown, like you said, this year. Part of that was Meridiana as well. They were trying to get their wastewater treatment plant up and running, and so that was almost a year behind. So they had slowed down, but now they're picking back up. I think we've had 3 or 4 different plats in review. So that one's moving forward. Of course, Lakeland's pretty much built out. Rodeo Palms is somewhat on a standstill right now, with Manvel Palms, or what used to be called Yanni Palms. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with them. Foxtail Palms, to their south, though, is moving forward, it seems like, in earnest. Sedona Lakes has a fourth phase? Ashton Woods, to their south, they're moving forward as well. So we're still in constant meetings with all of these developers, but again, there's nothing that we can do to make them develop. I'm sure that they have their own pro formas that they have to look out for, and when the timing's right, we'll know, because it's kind of a feast or famine, really, in the development world.
Is there anything the city is doing or not doing that's affecting the developments? Anything we could do better, or doing all we can do for our developers?
We meet with our bigger developers, Hillwood and Rise. We're meeting with them on a monthly basis. We're meeting with the chamber on a monthly basis, and the school district. So all of our partners, in the community, we're trying to meet with them and proactively visit with them. The mayor and I both are reaching out as much as we can. Mm-hmm. So I guess at best, we should be neutral. I guess we're not affecting it one way or the other. Whenever y'all are ready to develop, we're ready for you.
Same thing with the town center?
Right, same thing. Actually, we have updated meeting this Wednesday, right? Yep. With Manvel Town Center. And so they on the commercial side, it's a little different world. They play pretty close to the vest because they don't want to, inadvertently blow a deal. Hey, we've got so-and-so on the hook, but don't say anything yet because, they haven't signed the final paperwork just yet. So we are privy to some information that, we don't want to be the cause of, sharing that before it's ready to be shared, right. Of course.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments, questions from council? All right, I'll go ahead and dive into what I have. So Councilman Oplager had mentioned this at the last meeting. So, I'm a firm believer that whenever we make a decision, we need to have all the facts in front of us. That way we can make the most informed decision possible. And so the councilman here to my left had asked, okay, what would it look like if we wanted to lower the tax rate? What would it look like pulling from the unused? What would it look like if we wanted to delay certain expenditures? And so I believe, and I might just be one, that we can and that we should find a way not to raise taxes on our citizens. It was mentioned during the public hearing by a comment that I read mentioning the citizen survey, where 79% of the survey residents said they didn't want their taxes to go up. And so I believe that we have ways, and the most viable solution would be transferring from our fund balance in order to cover these one-time expenditures. Because keep in mind, these aren't reoccurring expenditures, these are one-time expenditures. And I want to share two stories with you, because I think this puts it into the reality of the decision that we're making and the real-world ramifications of it. I talked with a single mother who's raising 2 kids in Rodeo Palms, and she's going back to school. And to some people, $16 a month doesn't seem like a lot, but to her, it's everything. To her, at the time of trying to figure out how to make ends meet, how to provide a better life for her and her family with the student debt that she's taking on, that's a lot of money. To make it even more personal, my parents, they moved to Manvel in 2021, thinking that they would retire here. It's a city their grandkids live in. It's close to another one of their grandkids. My dad's 58, my mom's 58. They want to retire soon. They're not in the best of health. And they're looking at it saying, can I realistically, in 5 to 8 years' time, be able to pay $2,000 a month when I retire in property taxes? Which, for me, and I think all of us agree, we want to keep our family close, especially as they get older in years, but that's at risk. And I know Manvel is not the one that levies the full tax bill. We're a portion of it, and I think that's important for everyone to understand. But we still have a role to play. A lot of residents have submitted comments and spoken during the public hearings, and I think it's great to see people that are involved, people that are watching, paying attention, reaching out to us. And a lot of residents that I talk with give me great feedback on both sides of the spectrum. And so that's the difficult decision that we make. We talk to some residents and they don't want to see their taxes going up. We talk to some residents and they are fine with taxes going up if it goes to fund certain things. And so, sometimes the right decision is not the easy decision. And we have to contemplate how the decisions that we make have those real world ramifications. And I think because of the wise fiscal stewardship that's been displayed over these past few months, the diligence by the team to recognize the TERS clawback, which is almost $1 million that we're able to take in this year, sets us up to be able to pull from the unused fund balance to do all of the priorities in this budget while not raising taxes on citizens. I think that's huge. The budget that was presented to us on the 18th tonight's the 18th, so at our last meeting, showed that our fund balance was going to be at 47%. The budget that we have in front of us tonight shows the fund balance at 55%. So just 2 meetings ago, we would have been okay with voting on a budget with the fund balance at 47%. So if we go to 47% or slightly below that, which we were comfortable with doing 2 weeks ago, that would allow us not to raise taxes. Because we can't look at this budget in a vacuum. We have to look at what's been done since 2018, where taxes have gone up each and every year, but we also have to look at what are the future needs. What are the equipment that the police station's going to need? We have a water reclamation facility. What are those needs going to be? And so the other comment that I've heard made is, and you hear this talked a lot about with budgets, is that you're cutting the budget. You're cutting expenditures. One, I think that we can pull from the unused fund balance and not have to do that. But even then, some of the other items that are proposed, if council wants to consider those, are not cutting anything. But these are new expenditures that could be proposed as being delayed. For example, the new hires. Let's delay those by 6 months, which would save us over $200,000. So it's not cutting any expenditures, but more so delaying those expenditures. But with that, I'll rest my case, and I'll just say that whatever the final result is, I look forward to working with each of you to implement this budget in a responsible and community-focused way. And I appreciate I know each of you have put in a lot of thoughts, that you've had meetings with Dan and with Rosie, and that you don't make this decision lightly. And so I appreciate your consideration of it. And I know I'm going to be offering an amending motion that we can certainly take a vote on and discuss. But before I do that, I want to open it up to see if council has any comments, questions, anything that they'd like to present before I make that amendment motion. Councilman Oaklager.
So I do. So the roads, all the asphalt roads are in dire need of repair already. You drive down any street in Manvel that has asphalt, and on the right-hand side, you're losing the roads. Every one. And we don't have a number for that to fix it yet, do we? So we have no idea. So that money will have to come out of the fund balance. All right? That's money that we're going to have to look at, and you're going to have to fix these roads. Because over where I live, there's a little S-curve. Both sides of the roads are caving in. That means if you're on that curve, it just turned into a one-lane road. One lane. It's no joke, right? Every one of them, you know that. So I'm just deeply concerned as we sit here and approve this budget, there's not enough money, right? We're going to have to pull out, because it's going to happen. We're going to have to fix the roads. Folks, that live on asphalt roads aren't going to go for that, right? To say, oh, geez, we didn't plan for that. We don't have any money for that. We can't pull out, because if we start pulling money out of the fund balance, and then here's my other question on the permits. We're short on the permits for this year, I believe, right, Manager Dan? And that shortage is going to have to come out of the fund balance to make up the difference.
Well, the revenues aren't what the projections would have shown that they would.
Right, so it's going to be a short.
Yes, sir.
And that comes out of the fund balance. Yeah?
Well,
At the end of the year.
really, the new expenditures, I would say, just expenditures in general, come out of the fund balance, so
Right.
to the tune of 600 or so thousand.
So there's going to be some money pulled.
Yes, sir. Now, what we don't know is, of course,
So that's just kind of, okay, thank you. That's kind of where I stand, right? It's just we have some unknowns, some unintangibles on the asphalt roads. Any asphalt road in Manvel it's going to need to be fixed. I don't know how much it's going to cost, and I'm concerned that if we start pulling it, if we're going to do anything, if we're going to say no new taxes, let's go no new revenue, right? Hey, that's what, because then we're not raising taxes, all right? So that's where I stand.
Thank you for your comments, Councilman. Any other comments? Well, what I'll say in response to your comments, Councilman Oaklager, is that because of the exponential growth that we're seeing in Manvel, if you adopt a tax rate of 51 cents, that doesn't raise taxes on the average resident. So 95% of the time, the no new revenue rate dictates just as such. You don't raise taxes. But for fast growth cities, that's not always necessarily the case. What I would suggest is, based off of your comments, if you believe very strongly about the roads, it would be that regardless of what the result is tonight, that you set up a meeting with Dan and Robbie to determine what that cost would be. And I look forward to seeing an amendment come forward that you would put on the agenda in order to increase the funding for roads to cover that cost. Because we can sit here and we can talk, as I've said, in theoretics, but it's important that we back that up with action, each and every one of us, regardless of what we do. We have to stand for something, and if we don't stand for something, then we'll fall for anything. And so I appreciate your comments, and I think that's important. And I think it's working through those numbers and kind of figuring out what that cost would be, how we could fit that in, what that looks like over years to come is going to be extremely important.
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so with this analysis, I think that you did, Mayor Davis, now that we have it, I would like to ask Manager Johnson and Rosie, what are your thoughts about these numbers? This is a proposal to transfer $1 million out of the unused fund balance to cover one-time additional cost. And so that's depleting from the fund balance, but yet that doesn't really save us for the long term of catching up, which is what we've discussed here over and over again. I went for a 3-mile walk down the roads, down all these streets here. There's no sidewalk, so personally, we're way behind. I mean, we cannot sit here and say we're the city on the rise and we don't even have sidewalks. I'm sorry, I'm very passionate about that. I would love to see us get together and talk about that at a future date for a future budget. But he's right. I was walking down the street and was falling and cracking and almost fell 3 times walking down Patterson. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous that our city is a city on the rise and we're bringing beautiful subdivisions here, but yet here, it looks like you went back in time, and we are playing catch up. And I hear you, Mayor Dan. You know, I respect you. I think you've done a phenomenal job, and I'm just going to go on the record and say that I don't think you won specifically because you promised to not raise taxes. I think you won for an array of things. That is one of them. Absolutely. However, I believe that we deserve all the things that we've sat here and talked about. Do I agree with not raising taxes? 100%. If Rosie and Dan can look me in the eye and say, this is a way to get it done, then I will vote for that. But if they cannot say that, and my fellow council members don't feel that this is, something we can actually move forward and do, and it is a firm way of moving forward, getting the city forward, but also meeting the needs that we need. Not all the needs, not all the wants, right? In budgets, we have to make the hard decisions and not say yes to everything. Absolutely. But at this point in time, the question remains, how can we get the most done without the minimal damage to the tax bill? And I'm going to go on record and say also that when I moved to Manvel in 2015, we had just voted in the bond for Alvin ISD. That's a massive chunk. We're already paying, I think my bill was like $5,000 to Alvin ISD, that bond. So $192 for anybody living in Manvel. They're not moving to Manvel because they're trying to go backwards. I'm sorry. Manvel is known for being the city on the rise, and it's something that we need to look at. Do I want to raise taxes? No. Is it feasible? Does it make sense? Can we do all the things that we've sat here and talked about? We're moving backwards, without being able to make an effective decision, without going to voters. With voting, we already voted on the 56-cent rate, right? What are your thoughts?
Well, the presentation in the workshop earlier, if we're truly looking at, $3 million or so that we're going to need to furnish this police station, it makes us a little apprehensive about taking any money out of savings. Now, granted, that's not going to be all in at one time, but still, just between that and the wastewater treatment plant that we heard at the last meeting, there are plenty of things to spend this money on, no question about it. We're just concerned, I guess, about the long-term effects of this, is really from the staff perspective. That's what we're concerned about.
So can you clarify with specifics?
Sure.
Yes or no?
Oh, no.
So no.
No.
It's not feasible to adopt this and move forward.
Feasible, yes.
Okay.
Advisable, no.
Okay. But is it something that you agree that would help us move forward in a very sustainable way where we can manage our budget in a proper way and meet the needs that you have in the budget?
Rosie?
No? You don't feel comfortable with that at all?
No.
Can you tell us why?
For the same reasons that he just outlined.
Okay.
The added funds we're going to be needing for the police department. The funds we're going to be needing for the water reclamation facility.
Okay.
I'm training my brain there. And anything else that comes up. It's not advisable for us to hit the fund balance other than for one-time things. Your capital items, a major street repair like we had to have all of a sudden. We need that money for emergencies.
Okay. So not even like what Dan's proposing, $1 million out of the fund balance and the transfer for the additional equipment expenditures? And then delaying the positions 6 months. We could do that. I like that idea.
So in reality, in practice, all 8 of these people aren't going to be hired on October 1. It's going to
Okay.
take time. It always takes time. So, there's always some sort of a lag in there. But then at the same time, there's some revenue that's not going to come in, so it's close. It's going to be fluid, though.
Okay, and then as soon as I'm done, I'll turn it back to Mayor Dan. I just want to just clarify my position. I want to first of all, Dan has done an amazing job trying to keep his word. I respect that. I admire that, and I think that's phenomenal from a mayor that has come in, taking action and doing this, and the fact that he has wrecked his brain for 2 months trying to figure out a way to do this. I have to give him credit for that. I just have to. But also, I have to look at the logic of it as well. And so with that being said, I mean, looking at this, I feel like this is a great plan, but it's still tough to swallow for me. I know for me, there's a lot of things on here that I think we can actually do and maybe meet in the middle, right? But at the end of the day, we have to make the best decision for our residents. And I'm hopeful from everything we've heard over the last 2 months is that next year we'll have more sales tax. That's the goal. If Manvel is growing, then the burden shouldn't continuously be on our residents. This should be for the next year. Am I wrong in that statement? Yay or nay?
Can you just maybe rephrase the question?
So my question is that the decision tonight that we're taking is a big deal. It's huge, right? It's the first that I get to vote on. We've all wrecked our brains. I've prayed about it. I've struggled. I've lost sleep. I know my colleagues have as well. I know you guys have because y'all have had to work the numbers for us. At the end of the day, if you guys believe that this year making this decision to vote on your recommended tax rate, I know Rosie said 56 cents. You said 56 cents as well. I think you said to get everything, we'd have to vote at 65 cents, which is not happening, right?
Right.
This year is this way because we're anticipating, which to answer Larry's question was, we don't have a scientific number, forecastable number on sales tax and permits, et cetera, and the growth. However, we are anticipating with the new council and the new movements forward that the tax rate, the sales tax will increase, right? And all of that should help off balance that for the next year. Am I wrong or am I right? Or can we find clarity on that?
Okay, well, it all depends when these new businesses start opening. HEB was supposed to have opened, I believe, a few months back.
Well,
Yeah, so let's just, with delays and everything, they're not opening on schedule. And we've heard many reasons why now. So the sales tax will start to come in, but HEB is not a high-producing sales tax because most of their stuff is tax exempt to begin with. The other part of it is a lot of them are with a 380 agreement where we're returning half the sales tax to the developer. So the increase will be there, but it's not as much as, at one point or the other, it should start to offset the property tax. It's just not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a couple of years to get there.
And what I'll add to that, to what Rosie was saying is, in theory, yes. As your city grows, you have more revenue coming in. That burden should be spread out amongst more areas. But the city of Pearland just voted to increase their tax rate by 3 cents. So we're seeing a cent reduction. Pearland saw a 3 cent increase. City of Alvin, they're seeing they voted on a 4 cent reduction. Now they increased their homestead exemption on homesteaded properties in their city to 20% to offset some of that. So it's tough. This year's budget includes a lot of one-time supplementals, almost $1.6 million of one-time supplementals. That will then open up $1.6 roughly million in next year's budget. But that could certainly be taken up with something else. It's tough to say what the needs are going to be, what the roads are going to be, as Councilman Oplager said. So in theory, yes, but you have to take it on a case-by-case scenario. And that's the reason why this 20-year vision plan and 5-year comp plan is going to be so important, because it's going to allow us, and the work that Dan and Rosie and the team are doing, to help us be able to better forecast what the future needs are going to be. So that way we can take the appropriate steps today to set up future councils. When we're all long and gone, we're no longer serving. Unless we pull a Larry, we come back a few decades from now. You set them up for success. And that's why these decisions are so important today. Did that help kind of add to it a little bit? All right.
Thank you, Rosie.
Councilman.
Okay, I was going to remain silent. But you mentioned the 20-year plan and the 5-year comprehensive. Joining council, I made a commitment to work with a team that would be forward-looking. And I'm sure that any staff member that's worked in any other city governments we understand Manvel is a unique project, or whatever, whatever we want to call it. We have so much that we have to really catch up to. Infrastructure. We still have rooftops that are planned, so that means there are going to be more residents coming into the community, and there are so many needs that we have to make. We know that the market, just from that presentation from CORE, the market is volatile. We are now a global, whether we want to accept it or not, we are a globally operating business focused nation. So we're impacted by anything that happens anywhere in the world. And that can drive up the cost of prices. Some of the delays that we've allowed over the years, we're paying for those now. We're paying greatly. We've got to have and I know I'll be judged by the residents accordingly, but we've got to have the strength and the courage to do what should be done now that is in the best interest of developing this growing city. Unless we're going to shut down everything and say we're not going to develop anymore, we're not going to grow anymore, which is unrealistic. We have got to look and plan for these unknowns. And again, it scares me to death every time we have to go to this fund balance and reduce it, because there are too many unknowns that may impact us. So I'm saying all that to say is, yes, if I had the power to fix everything and lower the tax rate, of course I would do it. I just don't feel it's very realistic with the needs that we have currently. And I may be proven wrong, and I would love to be.
Well, thank you for those comments, Councilman. I appreciate. I'm glad that you spoke up. I appreciate that. Any other comments or questions from Councilman Lance?
I do not want to raise taxes. I don't. And I've tried, and we've all tried and tried. Dan, we've spent a lot of time on this, and I've lost a lot of sleep. I've gotten up at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, worrying about this. We take this stuff serious. We do. That's why we ran for office, because we want the best for the citizens. And honestly, I thought me being on this side of the desk, I was going to find some ways. I was going to cut some corners, But we're not the U.S. government selling toilet seats for $1,000 a piece. We don't have that kind of fluff. We've tried and we've tried and we've tried. There's things this city needs, and we're a long way from being where we need to be. We're in the midst of growing pains. We think next year is going to be great. I think next year is going to be great. But when we hear about, we have this coming on, but money goes back to them because of this, or money goes here because of that, it is a concern that we are growing, and we're growing fast, but we have people out there helping us grow, and we have to pay them for their help. And that's taking some of our revenue that we think's just coming in hand over fist. So I have my concerns about pulling money from our accounts. I don't want to go to 56 cents, but I think we're kind of in a corner.
Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate those comments. Anyone else?
I'd like to make a motion to pass it, please.
But if you'd like to make a motion, please go ahead.
I would like to make a motion to pass the tax rate that we're discussing of 56 cents.
Pause 1 second. So I'll have you, Councilwoman, I'll have you make that motion. Housekeeping, what we're doing is we're voting on ordinance.
We're on the wrong ordinance?
Yeah, so we're talking about the budget right now. So what we're looking at here, Councilwoman, is ordinance 2023-032, and this is going to be a roll call vote. So since basically what you did is you called the question, so what I'll ask is if you make a motion to just approve that ordinance number, then we'll look for a second. We'll see if there's any comments, and then we'll take a roll call vote. So it's agenda item number 1 on page 3. So you see right there where it has the ordinance number. If you just make a motion to approve that, then we'll look for a second.
So I would like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 2023-032.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any final comments or questions?
We need to read this.
That will be the tax rate? Oh, the item underneath?
Yeah.
We that is more so parliamentarian. We just have to read off that first line and then make a motion to approve the ordinance in and of itself. So with that, we're calling for the vote as a roll call order. I'm going to go with Councilman Acree first. Okay, Councilman Lands?
Yes.
Councilman Oplager?
Yes.
I'm going to be a nay. Councilman Perry?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sarmiento?
Yes.
Councilman Hudson?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes in a 6-1 vote. Now we are moving on to agenda item number 2. I'll read this off, and then we have specific language that's going to need to be read for this one. So we have consideration and possible action to ratify the property tax increase reflected in the 2024 fiscal year budget that was just adopted and raises more property taxes than the fiscal year 2023 budget. So Councilman Perry, if you can read off, it's this first line, it's the non-bolded section. If you can read that off as it's...
Mayor, that language is going to be for item number 3. This one is just a regular motion.
This one is just a regular motion. Okay, perfect.
Number 2.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion. Does anybody have a motion?
Possible action to ratify tax, yes.
I make a motion that for this consideration and possible action to ratify the property tax increase reflected in the 2024 fiscal year budget.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. Tammy, does this need to be a roll call vote? Just a regular vote. Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes in a 6-1 vote. Now, Councilman, if you're able to read off this one verbatim, this is going to be for agenda item number 3, which is consideration and possible action to approve on first reading ordinance 2023-0-33.
Tax rate adoption motion for 0.560000. Motion that the property tax be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.560000, 56 cents, which is effectively a 35.02% increase in the tax rate. The tax rate consists of 0.352393 for maintenance and operations and 0.207607 for debt service as reflected in Ordinance 2023-0-33 to adopt the municipal tax rate for tax year 2023.
Thank you, Councilman. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. This is also going to need to be, correct, Tammy, a roll call vote for this one? Okay. Councilman Acree?
Yes.
All right. Councilman Lands?
Yes.
Councilman Oplager?
Yes.
I will be a nay. Councilman Perry?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sarmiento?
Yes.
Councilman Hudson?
Yes.
All right, motion passes in a 6-1 vote. So congratulations, Dan, Rosie, and the team. I know that there was a lot of work, a lot of effort that was put into this. So I think tomorrow we begin on the next budget preparation. Is that correct? Something like that, right?
Can I say something?
Absolutely, Councilwoman.
I just want to say thank you to the mayor. I know that you really you did your best to keep your word, and I don't think anybody is going to not see the effort that you did in that. I think we all voted right, and I really respect everything that you did to keep your word and to really fight for the citizens that didn't want those $192 to go up. So I just wanted to say that on the record is thank you for that. I appreciate it, and I see it, and I know that our citizens do too. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I appreciate that. We will now move on to agenda item number 4, which is consideration and possible action to approve the first of 2 readings of ordinance 2023-0-34. Dan, I'll turn this one over to you.
Yes, sir. So in your packet, Mayor and Council, you have the rate study report that was completed by Freese and Nichols, March of 2022. You also have a draft ordinance for the corresponding rate increase that they recommended in that study. So the utilities fund is a different fund from the general fund. That's the fund that we've been talking about the most during the budget process. The utility fund is supposed to be a fund that pays for itself. And up until, I believe, this year, it did not do that. So in the years past, money would have to be transferred from the general fund over to the utility fund just to pay its own way. And so the utility fund includes not only, of course, the operations of the water and wastewater plants, but the personnel that work on those plants, our water and sewer lines and mains that are actually out in the ground, our fire hydrants, our manholes, all of the utilities, even their vehicles that they use for utilities. So we have to spend a lot of effort to keep those separate. Even though Ray and his team, they're part of Public Works, it's a separate fund, and we have to keep everything separate accordingly. So whenever they put the rate study together 2 years ago, what they noticed was essentially if you don't respond quickly, things are going to escalate, and you're going to have to keep transferring more and more money from the general fund to the utility fund. So last year you saw your first rate increase in, Tammy, 20 years. It'd been a very long time.
Since I've been here, at least 19 years, that's the first time that they've been.
Okay, the first rate increase period, perhaps. So within their report, they've got some comparisons, what other cities, where our rates compare to them. And it was, I want to say 13% last year. This year it's almost 15%. It's another increase. But what you'll see is over a 10-year period, the study showed that you needed to reach a certain number, and they did not recommend that you do that all in 1 year. So it's sort of a stepped process. This is the worst year, quite frankly. What they're proposing next year, I want to say is only 6%. Yeah, 6.3% for next year. 2.7% the year after. So it starts to flatten off a little bit. That could change if we get more customers, of course. But since we didn't get a huge jump in customers this year, we're still recommending that we keep our foot on the gas with the rate increase. Now this, of course, just impacts City of Manvel water and sewer residents that are on that are our customers. So if you're in Rodeo Palms or you're in Sedona Lakes, South Fork, Pomona, this doesn't impact you. Those rates are handled through their own mud. If you're on a well and septic, this doesn't impact you. But does that kind of help paint the broad brush of where we're at here? And we can't just, we talked about since the previous council approved this report. We talked, well, is it a done deal? No, it's not. I mean, we still need to come back to council each year and show the work on why this is something that needs to be done. So we're just looking for that tonight, Mayor, as a approval for this rate increase. Rosie, the budget that we just adopted does have these numbers in there in anticipation of this, if that helps.
And so if a rate is adopted lower than the 14.9%, that means that we would be running a deficit, and we'd have to transfer funds from the infamous fund balance in order to cover that. So that's one thing to note. And I was involved in this first rate study, and back when this came before us for a vote to actually increase the rates by 13.4%, I was one of the 3 no votes, along with Councilman Albert and Councilwoman Tyson. We were the only 3 that were impacted by the rate increase, and the reason I believe that we voted no was because we were told at that time, we were provided misinformation, that the rate increase was to fund new growth. So the current ratepayers would have to bear the burden of future growth. But when we've started to unpack the numbers during this budget cycle and started to dive into it, if you look at the utility fund, it's a net zero. It is not paying for future growth. It is simply to maintain what we have today, to provide a high level of service to the community and to make sure that Ray and his team have what they need to maintain what we have. And so as one of the ratepayers for this, I understand the need. I understand the necessity. I'm not happy with it, but I get it. Pearland just increased their rates. Alvin just increased their rates. And as I talked with the different council members, as I talked with those different cities, nobody's doing it to profit off of it, but it's simply to maintain what we have or even improve the quality of service that we have for the current residents. What do we need? And so while I voted against the budget and the tax rate, I understand the necessity of these rates. And it doesn't make me happy to see what I'm going to pay in water and wastewater going up, but in order to maintain what we have to do this. The other thing that I'll add, and Dan, I believe that we're going to be working on this soon, is going to be taking a different approach to how we calculate wastewater. Can you speak to that for just a second?
Sure. At the first of the year, what we want to do is average our wastewater rates. So right now, you don't have a meter on your wastewater. Whatever goes, you take a shower and you wash clothes and all those kind of things. You don't have a meter, so it's just a percentage of your overall water usage, your water meter usage. So in the summer, if your water usage goes up, and you only have the 1 meter that handles your water and sewer rates, well, then your wastewater goes up as well. And you're not necessarily using more wastewater. You might just be watering the grass. Well, that water is probably going into the ground, not necessarily going into our wastewater system. So some people will combat that with getting a separate meter, which you can do. You can have an irrigation meter, and that is connected directly to your lawn sprinkler system, and you don't pay any wastewater on that particular meter. If you want to do that, obviously that costs something, but bigger homes do that sometimes. If not, then it's going to go up. Your wastewater is going to go up just like your water does. So what we can do is it a 3-month average that we talked about, Rosie? Yeah, a 3-month sort of an average. So the total amount for the year is still the same for your wastewater, but at least it doesn't jump up and down as much. So it sort of normalizes it, helps you maybe plan your own personal budget at the house a little bit better. So anyway, we're working on that. Rosie's had some experience doing that in the past, and I think Brenda has too. So that's something that we want to bring to you to hopefully start, I think January 1, is that what we said? Yeah, January 1.
Thank you for that, Dan. Do I have any comments or questions from council regarding this agenda item?
So just, and please correct me or clarify, you mentioned that some of the developed communities like Rodale, Palms, what have you, won't be impacted by this because this is only for city customers. But just so that they don't feel they're just being targeted. But it is a fact that those that are in those developed communities, they pay rates to a municipal utility district, and they also pay a rather large property tax levy.
Absolutely.
And so just, so that they don't feel that they're just being targeted.
Sure.
Because they're city customers. So everyone is actually paying.
Yes, exactly
But
what you
in this
just said.
case, the city didn't have the infrastructure, so the developer did it. And so that tax is levied to repay the developer plus whatever the rates are.
Sure, and of course, MUDs aren't immune from rate increases as well,
Correct.
but each one of them will manage their own, and just like we're doing, okay, is this still paying for itself? Pomona has added a second water plant out there, so it wasn't free, it cost something, so they got bond money, but now they've got more operators and whatnot, so I don't know, I think we have a link where we can look at what the different MUDs are charging for their water and sewer, and it's close, but Sedona Lakes, Pomona, South Fork, Rodeo Palms, Newport Lake Estates, and Meridiana, all of those are separate. So this is more, of course, our Old Manvel, Lakeland, Blue Water Lakes, Del Bello Lakes, Terra Estates, Valencia eventually.
I know what my MUD is charging, but I know that's not relevant here.
Yes, sir. Great point, though.
Well, and I think to add to that, Councilman, it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, Ray, we don't staff those plants. We don't oversee those plants. Those are handled by the MUDs internally. It's that self-governance, which is why electing the right people to the MUD boards is so important.
So important.
All right. Well, do I have any other questions, Councilman Lance?
Just clarify, this is, our water and sewer, these rates, this is basically money in, money out. I mean, we're not building a big trust fund or anything else. This is for the service, and so people need to understand that are against the increase, that it's not something we're doing for whatever else. We're doing it because that's what it costs.
Sure. Now, in the spirit of full disclosure, so there's a small contingency that you set aside because you can't anticipate, a hydrant getting run over and, it was a hit and run. Well, maybe insurance covers it, maybe they don't, or all of a sudden, a generator goes out or something like that. So we do have some funds set aside within that. It's a very small portion, but at least it's something in there. So, yes, sir.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. We now have consideration and possible action to approve the first of two readings of Ordinance 2023-0-35. Dan?
Well, Mayor, this is in response to our past legislative session, the first of many, I think, of changes that you're probably going to be seeing. This one is an easy one. Basically, state law now says cities cannot enforce a juvenile curfew ordinance. Due to House Bill 1819, prohibits cities from adopting or enforcing an order, ordinance, or other measure that imposes a curfew on juveniles, which are persons younger than 18 years of age. And as of September 1, our ordinance is no longer enforceable. Therefore, we have before you the ordinance that repeals our current ordinance to make us congruent with state law.
Appreciate that update. Pretty straightforward, huh? Captain, is there anything that you would like to add regarding this? I appreciate that, Captain. Hey, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, is it going to make it provide difficulties for what you guys do as the PD?
We really don't have a influx of juveniles being past curfew. I think most of the citizens around here, like better words, police their kids very well. Anytime on nights when I was on patrol that we had any issues were, kids that were already graduated from high school and such like that. Of course, I was calling kids or at that point, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to impact the city as much as what people might think when they see this. I don't know the reasoning behind why they lobbied for this bill, but we will adjust and handle what we need to handle when it happens.
I appreciate that, Captain.
Yes, sir.
Any comments or questions from council? Yes, sir.
I assure you my kids will be in like they're supposed to be. So thank you.
Kids and grandkids, right? All right, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-0-35. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, Austin. Consideration and possible action to approve resolution 2023-R-24. Joe.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. This particular resolution is related to a agenda item that was on the consent agenda for the second reading related to the alarm systems by adjusting the fee schedules and the frequencies for those fee schedules related to burglar alarms and fire alarms. In fact, those fees went down a little bit based upon the frequencies. The second part of it is related to a system that is called, this is a long phrase here, but emergency responder radio communication systems. To keep it very simple, those systems are put into buildings that have a large footprint, either square footage or multiple levels above grade, as we say, or several stories. They're designed to be able to provide the ability for first responders, be it police, fire, even fire marshals, to be able to have good radio communications within buildings. Sometimes we get into those larger buildings and we lose the ability to transmit or receive. These systems are installed to be able to minimize that. So what happened last year when we were going through the fee schedule, I just missed this particular system, and all this is doing is being able to give us the ability to review these plans, have a nominal fee for that, and a testing fee for us to be able to go out and verify these systems are installed properly and meet code. So if you have any questions, I'll be able to answer those for you.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that update. And this is also reflecting the ordinance that we passed in the consent agenda for alarms. I noticed within the document that was included, there were items here in blue. And I believe that is based off of the past election and the proposition that was passed. We are now reflecting those changes within the ordinance. Is that correct? Yes.
So we're just going to leave those in blue because it didn't affect everything 100% across the way, so it just makes it easier to staff to be able to differentiate between which items would be affected as of that election, and it's labeled on the top of the fee schedule as well.
Okay, so those have already been included. It's
Correct.
been there for a while. We're not voting on those. It's just the red lines.
items.
Perfect. Any comments or questions from council? Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion in the second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Agenda item number 7, consideration and possible action to approve an interlocal agreement between the City of Manvel and Brazoria County Conservation and Reclamation District Number 3.
Thank you, Mayor. So as you know, as council knows, we have 3 drainage districts in the city of Manvel. Brazoria Drainage District Number 4, Number 5, and then Conservation and Reclamation District Number 3. The city entered into an interlocal agreement with BDD 4 on September 8th of 2020, with BDD 5 on September 14th of 2020, and prayerfully, we'll enter into this agreement with CNR 3 on September 18th of 2023. So it has taken 3 years longer than with the other 2. It's just been a concerted effort on the side of our council and our mayor and our staff to bridge the gap that had been created over the years between the city and the drainage district. So what we have in front of you is the same interlocal agreement that we had presented 3 years ago. Hasn't changed other than the date. So I am ecstatic to have this on the agenda tonight. So I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
Oh, thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. And I think the CNR3 viewed this as very important as well. They had somebody drive over and hand deliver us a copy. And I told them as a token of my appreciation, I'd be bringing them donuts on Thursday morning. So they're looking forward to that. Do I have any comments or questions from council? All right, I will proudly make a motion to approve the interlocal agreement between the City of Manvel and CNR3. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Now we can shoot off the confetti and celebrate. Alrighty. All right, we now have consideration and possible action to authorize the interim city manager to negotiate a professional services agreement with Kending Keast Collaborative for the strategic plan, comprehensive plan, and thoroughfare plan update.
So another exciting milestone here with this project, Mayor. In last year's budget, there was money set aside for a comprehensive plan update and a thoroughfare plan update. When council came, our new council started back in May, we started talking about a strategic plan, a vision plan, right? Vision casting. And so staff got together to let's see if we can combine all of these things, because there are some components within this vision plan or strategic plan that sounded an awful lot like a comprehensive plan, but still a different thing. So rather than trying to go out for a strategic plan, a comprehensive plan, and a major thoroughfare plan update, we combined the 3 of these into one RFQ. And amazingly, we had people apply for it and submit their qualifications. We had three different organizations submit their statement of qualifications. We got together as our selection committee, and thank you very much, Wale, for setting that up and going through the process. Brooke and Jessica worked a lot on this, and Joe's as well. So this was a true collaborative effort on the staff level too, because these are 3 very different things. But when we were able to, and if this works, it's going to be awesome. Because what I personally didn't want to happen is a strategic plan is done sort of in a vacuum by one company, and then it looks great and it's awesome, and then it's in a binder and it gets set on a bookshelf, and then the comprehensive plan comes along, and maybe it's the same company, maybe it's not, and they look at this binder, oh, that's neat, well, let's do something different or whatever. So by having all 3 of those, and the ones that applied, I think they got it. They saw where we were trying to go with that. So in our selection committee, we had, was it 10 different components that we looked at? Mainly, their experience on each one of these types of plans. Who are their subcontractors? Because if they don't have an engineer in-house, that's fine. But the engineer that they're choosing for their team, have they got experience with thoroughfare plans? So sure enough, one of them rose to the top. We're I guess 6 out of the 7 of us. So nobody was none of them were disqualified. All three of the applicants were very good, like in deliverables and all that kind of good stuff.
Because within the contract, we can negotiate the price, and ultimately that contract would come back before city council for approval.
The contract has to come
The
back. to
contract,
city,
yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'd like to ask a question, and Brooke, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here. I noticed that you ranked Future IQ higher than the other two. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, in my past city, I had worked with it before on the strategic plan. I was more familiar with them, so when they sent us their information, I was a bit more, familiar with how they were going, what their process would be. I'm not as familiar with the other companies, so I believe the ranking across the board. I think we'll get a good product from everybody, so no hard feelings at all. It was just what I was familiar with.
You knew the product. You knew
Exactly.
the output. Okay, because when I see that one variation, that one outlier, it's okay. Let me ask. So I appreciate that. So the next step here is if we authorize this tonight, Dan, you'll begin negotiations, start working through the contract, and then do we have an expected date when we will be able to vote on this?
We'd like to bring this before the end of the year. They're thinking a one-year process. Actually, that's what we put in the RFQ. So all of them said that they could do that within 11, 12, 13-month process. So, what we needed to happen was already happened tonight. The budget's moving forward, so the funds are still set aside from last year. So they're just rolling forward. No one balked at, well, wait a minute, that can't be done for how much you have budgeted, so that's good. So we're hoping immediately is when we would like to get started, quite frankly.
Appreciate that. Wale, thank you for your work on this, and for everybody that was a part of the committee. Appreciate your work. Do I have any questions or comments from council? No. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the city manager to start negotiations. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. We look forward to seeing what you can negotiate, Dan. You're an Aggie, so you've got great negotiation skills, right? Agenda item number 9, consideration and possible action to authorize the city manager to submit a grant application for municipally owned interior and exterior LED lighting retrofits for the State Energy Conservation Office, SECO, and to enter into any contract resulting from this grant, subject to budget appropriations. Wale.
Before you start off, I want to set the stage. So just a few months ago, I challenged in our staff meeting, I challenged everybody, all the department heads, look for grant opportunities. I don't know what's out there, but you know your field, and each one of us knows our field. So Tammy, I think you found this one, didn't you? So, okay, this sounds neat. What does this mean? Wale, he's the most tenacious person that I know, so get after it. See if it makes sense. And so he kind of burrowed in, and I think we have a grant opportunity. But to follow our grant policy that council adopted in 2021, what we wanted to do is bring it to y'all first. Let me rephrase that. Bobby said we have to bring it to y'all first to get authorization before we actually apply for this grant. This grant is due this week? Thursday, yeah. No pressure, right?
There's a matching component.
And there's a matching component, exactly. So I won't steal all of your thunder. Thanks, Wally.
All right. So this grant, it's mainly for a facilities retrofit. It wants to capture basically existing facilities. As you guys know, things are very expensive. You can't just build buildings left and right. So this is our opportunity to look at our existing facilities, not this one in particular, but like the one next door, Public Works, Roy Park, the currently existing police shed. So we can take an opportunity to utilize this grant to make improvements in the lighting. It's ironic because I actually spent this morning looking at a few line items that we've spent on improving lighting, and it's relatively expensive. You would think, $7 will get you some 4-pack of bulbs, but when you have, over 1,000 incandescent lights, and they're costing, you got the 6,000 kV, a box of that's costing almost $80 just to get 10 bulbs at the best discount you can find. You start going through and you comb through and you look at the metal halide lights on the side of the building that usually flicker or have issues, and replacing those you're talking thousands of dollars because you need a certified electrician, you need a permit, you need them to get up there, you gotta take time and replace them and buy everything, so it gets relatively expensive, and I saw thousands of facilities and maintenance funding being used to upkeep this, and what this grant does is it will allow us up to the amount of $50,000 in grant money that require a 20% match. That's really important, especially with grants in general. You look at the fine details. There are tons of grants out there, like scholarships, but you don't always qualify for them. That's a painstaking note, because since Friday I've been searching, and we are eliminated from a lot of them. We are a very prestigious community, so we don't qualify for a lot of things. But with that being said, this is a good opportunity. The way I rationalized even pushing for this grant and creating the match was utilizing our existing facility and maintenance funds for each of those facilities. I think the only one that doesn't have facilities and maintenance fund is Croy Park, which I think we talked about earlier in the year of trying to get a reoccurring balance to improve the park on the yearly. So hopefully that moves forward. And then that will create that budget. So we will pull from the facilities and maintenance to meet the match, which the irony of the way the grant is written, it's a reimbursable grant. So you got to spend everything up front, and then you get 80% back. But they still want to see the match, and that's another component I'm going to be writing if this moves forward tomorrow. That's what the grant entails, and it looks like it would definitely help, because I do see a benefit. It's not like we're just going to make unnecessary improvements. We've already exhausted the amount necessary for matching, so it looks like a true win-all.
Because it would ultimately save us money in the long run. There's an upfront cost of the 20%,
We will
but
save money up front, and we will save money in terms of improved lighting, less energy savings. So it's a full circle win.
well, I appreciate that, Wale, and I love to see that the grant writing policy is being utilized, and it's going through the process where council does have a say, and it doesn't just defer the responsibility to the city manager. So I'm happy to see this. Do I have any questions or comments from council?
So do we know what the total cost is? Of what the lights you were wanting to swap out?
Okay, yes. So I did a general breakout of it. I do not have it on hand, but I went, pulled some invoices that we had. I looked at the metal halide lights, for example, how much that cost to replace. I think it came out to roughly, each fixture was roughly like $600 in terms of buying the equipment, the charges for an electrician, any kind of fees associated with just that light. And I applied that to all metal halide lights. Incandescents, obviously, that's done in-house, and that's just the replacement. Now, to make the improvement, I looked at how much a new panel costs. So, like, these are LED panels right here. One of these panels was roughly $150 on the cheap end, $350 on the high end. So I applied that cost to the replacement of the standard halogen bulbs or the incandescent bulbs. And I applied that, and I multiplied that out. So like Public Works, every light there is incandescent. So we have to replace all of those. So as they burn out, we're going to first implement just standard maintenance by going forward and replacing them one by one, making those charges, requesting a reimbursement. And as we move forward and we see those savings and we see that the funding is still there, we'll do bulk. We'll do a true retrofit and do the improvement. That way we have costs going on throughout the year.
So it's all the buildings, city buildings?
Essentially, I think I even have the library on there, except this one. This doesn't need any new LED lights, but we already did the rear parking lot. I think there's one I counted for over there on the side.
But the ceiling is $50,000, right? That's the most that they'll
ceiling is
reimburse. Yeah.
$50,000.
So $10,000 is our most out of
That's going to
pocket.
cost us more than that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
If
So
one light
we don't know how
fixture
much more.
costs $600, and Croy Park has 6 fixtures, that's already $3,600.
Right. So they're going, what, LED lights?
We're going LED.
Right, so
We're
so
looking
your
at
electric
solar,
bill, we
we're
can look at
looking
the
at-
electric bill and see the savings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to see the savings on the electric bill. We're going to see the savings up front. Croy Park has one of the
Yeah.
is one of the ones for improvement, and that one had just 6 fixtures. We already needed to add an additional because of the improvements we're making, and now we can utilize this retrofit to at least shoulder a high portion of the burden.
Does it get any closer? Does it make us help for like was that LEED certification or anything like that?
You got Bobby smiling.
It's in the right direction. Okay.
All right, well, that's cool.
Well, I think it's a great thing too. I mean, it's spending $10,000 to save $40,000.
Exactly.
So,
I have a
Councilwoman?
question. Thank you. With this project for the retrofitting, so would that be a one-time thing we go through, retrofit everything, or would it be as needed?
Well, no, so there are a lot of guidelines. So one of the guidelines is that we have this completed in a 12-month period from when we go into agreement. So we will have to phase this out into that 12-month period. And of course, you don't put all your expenditures all up front at once. So we have a maintenance plan that we're going to start. We're going to start with what is most necessary, and then we're going to start with the retrofits. We're going to have maintenance ongoing as need be, like if something happened at Old City Hall and we lost maybe a panel, lost a bulb, we wouldn't go buy more bulbs. We'll look at procuring a panel or maybe 4 panels, and we'll start the retrofit process like that. We'll use what we still have in terms of M&S to fix a lot of our older facilities, but we'll start the retrofit process from day one. That way we have occurring charges every month. When we do these monthly meetings with them for updates, we can show that, hey, we've been working, we've been doing things. And then as we get mid-year, we'll start moving into rehab mode. We'll actually start decommissioning, maybe a whole section of a building that has old lighting and start putting in these panels that we started procuring.
Wonderful. And then also, I forget, it's been a long time since 2009, but there's the life, how would you say, the shelf life of an LED versus an incandescent. In and of itself saves time, not only on the money, but it's saving money in the long run because they last for
even the maintenance,
for a long time.
The technician having to change out a bulb every 3 years versus every 10. They know that, hey, if I touch that panel, I'm probably not going to be here when it's time to touch it again. So it's very reassuring to know that, the lighting we're going to will probably outlast the building it's going in.
Yeah. And then also, the last question I have is, it's a $50,000 max, and so our investment would be $10,000, but I think I heard you say we have to front the $50,000 and then we get reimbursed on the grant side, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so are we going to look for $50,000 worth of light fixtures to fix, or is that just the max?
So that is what the max is.
Okay.
And it's a reimbursable, so we have to spend it to actually get it.
Okay.
But the main thing is it's going to come out of facilities and maintenance. We're already utilizing a large amount of that funding just on those expenditures.
Just in repair and maintenance already?
Yes. So we're already utilizing a lot of that from what it shows in record. That, replacing these bulbs, buying new boxes. The crazy thing is you'll see a charge, 3 months for a box of lights, but then you see another one. So then you start to realize, did we lose those lights? Did we use those lights? Where are they? Very minimal traceability on those kind of things. M&S things just disappear. Sometimes they go up on the top of the shelf, they fall down, they break. And then you have a true loss. But this way, we're moving forward. We're actually going to have to be very accountable, show traceability, show all the procurement. You don't have those mistakes when you have all those eyes watching something as simple as light.
One last question I have, and this particular grant that we're going out to get, does it have any strings attached that would be not good for the city or something?
Not to say not good for the city.
Like, we don't have to give them something ungodly in return for the $50,000, $40,000.
No. This one was actually, I think the most stringent requirement was being a disadvantageous community.
Disadvantageous community?
Yes, but we're not. We're actually adjacent to one.
Okay.
I don't want to name them, but we're adjacent to one. We share a border, and that's what actually gave us the qualification.
Okay.
Just that, having a shared border, we come in lower on the points, but we still qualify. So that's what actually got us in to make these improvements. So it's truly we're trying to help kind of grant.
I love it. I love it. Good job, guys.
All right, I will make a motion to authorize the city manager to submit a grant application for the municipally owned interior and exterior LED lighting retrofits. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Congratulations, y'all. Thank you, Wale. Appreciate it. Agenda item number 10, consideration and possible action to approve a burn ban and authorize the fire marshal and/or mayor to lift it once the Keach Byram drought index as monitored and reported by the Texas Forest Service reaches and maintains 400 or less for 5 consecutive days. Joe.
Good evening again, Mayor, members of council. So when we were putting our agenda together last week, we were coming up on the 30 days on the burn ban that was approved last month. So that would have been approved prior to the next council meeting. So I wanted to take the verbiage out related to the 30 days, keeping the KBDI at 400 or less for 5 consecutive days. Now, we had a very weird event last Thursday and Friday. Some wet stuff fell from the sky. So as of today, we're on the second day being under 400 for the KBDI. However, we're going back up. So we're going to be pretty close when it comes to hitting those 5 consecutive days with no rain in the forecast. That is something I'd like for you guys to consider as well. I looked through the next 10 days and we're looking at 20% or less. So if we keep going up, like as of today, we went up 19 points. So at that point, if we stay at the same trend, we'll be right at the 400 by Thursday, which will be the 5 days, but it's continuing to go up. So I just wanted to make sure we remove that 30 days so that that wasn't in there prior, so that we didn't have to do an emergency one related to that. So I'd like to be able to just look at this based on the 400 right now, but if I see something by Thursday that we're getting really close, say like 390s, getting back up to the 400, and we continuing to go up, that would be something that I would discuss with the city manager and then reach back out to you guys.
Appreciate that, Joe. Any comments or questions from council? Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second from Councilman Lands. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Executive session. City Council will convene into executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074, personnel matters to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, and duties of a public officer or employee, city manager search, and we will enter executive session at 7:45 p.m. And I think we're going to have Chad, Bobby, and Tammy join us as well. All right, thank you, everyone. Council will reconvene from executive session at 8:30 PM, having taken no action. We will now go to mayor and council comments. Any comments from council? All right, with that, I will make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously 7-0. Good night, everyone.
Good night.